I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. Hector, will you please lead us in the pledge?
For me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adoption of agenda, any revisions?
No, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the agenda for the public hearing be passed and adopted as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Item 2, discussion, fiscal year 2011-2012 budget revision number 1. Steve?
Carla, are you ready?
Good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the board, Mr. Zimmerman, and members of the audience. Tonight, we are going to present to you the final budget revision that is supposed to be revised by May 15th, according to statute. And there are some several changes in the budget. We included a copy of the budget in your packet, and this presentation will make reference to the different pages on that budget. As you know, the expenditure budget contains categories in different classifications in the Maintenance and Operation Fund, Classroom Site Fund, Unrestricted and Soft Capital Funds, Special Revenue Funds that include federal and state projects, the Instructional Improvement Fund, the other funds, and then the last, Internal Service Funds. In your Maintenance and Operation Fund, on page 1 of your budget, in line 31, you'll see a difference in that budget. We went from $29,330,629. I'm sorry, these numbers are not the same ones. There we go. I'm sorry. I kept an extra slide in there. The adopted budget limit was $28,473,000 when we adopted the budget back in July. And now the revised budget limit is $28,570,013 for a difference of $97,000. Basically, this adjustment is due to ADM increase. There were a lot of corrections. We weren't able to close out the year, so that when we did the budget back in June and July, there were several changes in average daily membership. In this case, it was a positive change, $90,000. And then the projection for the budget balance carryover was a little bit different, about $6,553 than what we projected. And then there was some increase in tuition revenues, approximately $13,000, making up for that difference of $97,000. In your M&O budget, the FTEs, which are the full-time employees, the number didn't change as much. We went down about 2.4. And basically, these were funding shifts into other funding sources. As you know, that we presented at the last board meeting some information about our override and the overcommitment we had there. So 2 of the teachers that were funded from the override have been shifted to other funding sources in this budget revision. On page 3 of your budget, you will find your classroom site funds, which is also known as Proposition 301. When we adopted the budget, the limit was $1,440,298, and we're slightly higher at $1,449,200 for a difference of $8,902. And again, this is attributed to a slight difference in average daily membership and prior year interest. This fund is broken up into 3 funds, Fund 11, 12, and 13, also known as the teacher base pay, teacher performance pay, and the other. And again, when we adopted the budget, we didn't have any budgeted positions here. And now in this budget revision, we have 3 full-time employees, which are teachers. And the rest of the monies go for $600 base pay for approximately 300 certified employees, $1,500 performance pay for the same number of employees. And the last pot, which is the other pot, is the $500 that goes to offset health insurance costs for the 300 eligible employees. On page 4 of your budget, you will find your unrestricted capital fund. In the unrestricted capital, when we adopted the budget, that limit was $2,253,000. This revised budget is a decreased budget of $2,181,000, and the difference is almost $72,000. The difference lies in average daily membership and budget balance carryover, about $22,000 less in that area. And the other difference would be in the state reduction. As you know, this year the capital funds were reduced. In the unrestricted capital, that was reduced by 47%, and there was an additional $52,000 that we had not anticipated. The total reduction to NUSD in this fund was $693,940. And then the other difference in this fund would be in tuition and interest revenue. The unrestricted capital fund is where you would find expenses such as furniture, land and building improvements, vehicles, technology equipment, leases, like we pay a major portion of our transportation lease from this fund. But now the district has a heavier reliance on the unrestricted capital fund for textbooks, library books, and instructional aids due to the reductions also in the South Capital Fund. And that's the next fund that we will cover, which is also on page 4 of your budget. In the South Capital, we had projected a budget of $92,000. This budget now reflects $63,626 for a reduction of $28,374. Again, at that time, we did not anticipate a full reduction in South Capital. They cut this budget, the state cut this budget by 100%. That total reduction was $1,253,173. So there was an additional $30,000 that we had not anticipated in reduction in this fund. And there was the other differences lie in ADM, budget balance carryover, and some interest revenue. The soft capital monies, ironically, can now be spent for maintenance and operation expenses. Although we don't have any money here, you know, they've given us that flexibility to spend it for M&O purposes like salaries and benefits. But mainly, districts should spend soft capital monies for short-term capital items that are required to meet academic adequacy standards, such as technology equipment, textbooks, library resources, instructional aids, and so on. So these costs have now been shifted over to the unrestricted capital because this is a priority for the district. Okay. On page 6 of your budget, you will find your special projects, which are also known as federal state grants. The adopted budget limit there was $8,475,447, and now the revised budget limit is at $8,646,315, and the difference is about $171,000. And the differences here would be with your federal and state grant amendments that were done during the course of the year. Federal and state grants now fund approximately 85 positions here in the district. A slight difference from when we adopted, about 1.7. And the majority of these funds are those funds that are administered through the Arizona Department of Education. And then also on page 6, you have your instructional improvement fund, and this is also known as the gaming fund. The adopted budget limit was $292,957. The revised limit is now at $263,315. The difference, approximately $30,000 less. And again, this fund is similar to the classroom site fund. However, revenues determine the budget total. So if you do over projection of revenues, then you end up budgeting too much. So we are adjusting the budget downwards because of the revenue projection and also the carryover adjustment from prior year. From the Instructional Improvement Fund, we pay for 4 full-time employees, which are 4 certified teachers at Pearson Vocational High School. And the monies are also used for approximately 300 eligible employees for base pay of $150 each. Also on page 6, you have your other funds. And these are, I don't intend to go through all the funds, but the total amount of those funds when we adopted the budget was $4.4 million, and we're now almost $4.9 million, the difference of approximately $426,000. The big difference here is that we qualified for structured English immersion funds and in the amount of $205,256. And then the other differences will be in your school plant sale. These are proceeds from the auction, $1,125 there. Advertisement fund, $8,500. Gifts and donations, as the year progresses, we add the monies that are received from gifts and donations in this pot, and fortunately, we were able to add $81,251 there. Indirect costs, an increase of $80,000, and then the last fund that had a change was insurance proceeds, $51,365. The other funds pay on page 6, 3.4 FTEs. I'm sorry, and then these 3.4 FTEs are in the fiscal and business services through the indirect cost fund. Then also on page 6 is the last set of funds there, which are your internal service funds. Just a slight increase there, $15,174. And these funds include your employee insurance funds, your print shop services, transportation, and media services. The internal service funds fund one and a half full-time employees. The transportation fund pays for 1 classified employee, and the print shop fund pays for half a certified full-time employee. And then just to recap, all the funds in your budget are now at, we just broke $50 million, $50.4 million. That's an increase from when we adopted the budget of $588,325. And the FTEs are pretty much the same. The difference is about 1 in that total. So the total full-time employees that we have in this budget before you is 562.2. That is the extent of the presentation, and I would, open it up for any questions.
Charlotte?
I had a question on, you said we have 85 teachers that are being covered by federal grants and
It's not necessarily teachers. There are employees, total employees. It would be a
employees
combination
covered
of.
by grants.
Mhm.
Are the grants have good prospect to continue?
Yes, we believe so. As a matter of fact, we anticipate carryover, especially in the Title I, to be able to maintain the positions that are currently funded through those federal grants.
Okay, and those
So
individuals are funded fully out of those grants? Or did any of funding come from any other sources?
And I know that Ms. Scott is the time and effort person in the district, but we do have, like, for example, we do have some that are funded through 2 funding sources, like your kinder teachers. Those are funded half from your M&O budget and half from Title I. And I would say that the rest of the employees would be fully funded from those federal grants.
Okay.
Unless I'm wrong. Just a couple.
Thank you.
There may be just a couple that have a 20% funding from another source. But for the most part, those full-time positions are fully funded through the grant.
Just want to make sure that we see that's going to continue and it's going to progress, and the funds will be there next year and hopefully the year after and the year after that and the year after that.
Yes, and we've developed our list of the positions that we look at every year to make sure that we're able to sustain them through the following year. And at this point, we are confident that we are able to continue funding for those positions in next year's budget.
Thank you.
Hector?
Just to be clear, this is your final tweaking of this year's numbers?
Correct.
Has nothing to do with the 12, 13 budget that had a preliminary discussion about and that we still have to adopt.
Correct, and that's why I think Ms. Suarez had made asked the question as far as why didn't I do a comparison with my projected budget versus the current budget. It's because I was still working on the revision and I didn't feel comfortable in making those comparisons until the governing board approved this budget, and then I can move forward and then make the comparisons for you at our next presentation for the budget.
Thank you.
Frank, any questions? No. Marcy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Carla, this adopted revised budget, is this the one that the Auditor General looks at to come up to their conclusions of the different categories of what we spend money and how we're spending money?
Well, the budget is compared to the district's annual financial report. They do pull that data to prepare the classroom dollar report, is what they call it, from the annual financial report. The annual financial report will reflect these adopted or these revised budget figures and compare those to actual expenditures. And we won't be closing our fiscal year until sometime, after August, after our encumbrance period ends in August 31st. So we will be working on the annual financial report in September, and then October 15th is the date that we would bring back that to the board for approval.
And your critical eye on this, are we putting more into classroom instruction financially than we did on this last Auditor General's report?
In this budget, I would say that we're probably going to be pretty much the same. And we are making every effort as we prepare the 12-13 budget to keep that in mind, that we increase our costs in instruction, also in the areas of instructional support and student support as well, because those are the areas that we are compared against other school districts. So we are very mindful of that, and we will make sure that we are diligent in making sure that those percentages do increase in those areas.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. No other questions? Thank you, Carl.
Okay, thank you.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this first meeting.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
A second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, very good. On to the next meeting. Call to order. That's it. Any adoption of the, this agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the
No,
agenda.
excuse me. We're gonna be pulling one item. I'm sorry. I'm giving this a lot of thought, and I just don't think that we are ready, but Roman numeral 6, which is under consent, item H. I would like to table that item to the next board meeting.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adopt the agenda of our regular meeting of Monday, May the 14th, excluding under item 6H, as recommended by the superintendent.
Second?
A second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Have a call to the public. Frank Chavez?
Good afternoon, Superintendent and President, and to the public. My name is Frank Chavez, and I would like for you, I know you're going to be in an action item 9 for the insurance, that I really would like for some consideration to hold and not approve this item, because I believe that there are some cost or reductions that we could use for, once again, like the last time I was up here, I mentioned that even though go from an A plan, which is a Cadillac, to the B plan looks good, and that would be a reduction in cost savings for this district. It would be a heavy burden on the classified, considering the amount, their wages and the high cost of living that we are facing and lack of increase in cost of living or pay scale for us. If this item is mostly, I believe, for the family plan, that would really help. But right now we have a zero deductible. When you look at your deductible factors, it is high. And once again, like I mentioned, it is out of the pocket before the insurance starts paying. And I really would appreciate you really giving a second thought and tabling this item till we can assure that that would be the best for all of us. I don't believe it is, even though it's a good cost savings for the district. I believe there's other areas that we can focus on. And please, I really would appreciate your not approving the B plan, because we already have the A plan, and if people want to go to the B or the C, whatever that this district is approving, I believe those are the right of the people to do so. But percentages after your deductible, that we have to pay 15% or as much as 20% on different items, if you have kids, it's going to hurt you big time. And I really would like for you guys to consider that. If you care of our classified, you will see what I'm talking about. I don't want to really go into much detail. It's been presented to you in front of you, and I would appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the only request I have. Next item, governing board updates. Marcy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few items here, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Mrs. Weldon from Mary Welty Elementary School for showing me around the campus. I wasn't able to make the fifth graders historical characters presentation from Mrs. Villarreal's class, but Mrs. Weldon took the time to take me to the class, introduce me to the students, and some of them had their outfits on, and they were excited about it, and you had a wonderful culture that day, Mrs. Weldon. Thank you very much. Also, Mrs. Vasquez from Challenger School, thank you for the invitation to the Mother's Day presentation. I can tell that you have great parental support, all the mothers that were there, and it was very nice to see how the mothers were in tears enjoying the activity, and especially the kids singing to their moms there. It was very enjoyable, and congratulations on the community support you have at your school there. I also participated along with the superintendent of school for the Relay for Life for Cancer. NUSD had their own team there. Mrs. Scott was there wearing her purple t-shirt as a survivor. Congratulations to you, Mrs. Scott. And I participated with the Santa Cruz County team. I didn't know that NUSD had a team, but it was good to see that NUSD takes the time and that you were there, superintendent, representing and showing the compassion and everything for all the survivors and everything. I thought your presence was very well welcomed by all the community, really relished that you were there. Also attended that First Things First from Dr. Aaliyah Samuel at the Americana Motel. They were giving information to parents from 0 to 5 years of age. I hope all the elementary principals coordinate with Dr. Samuel. It's just a wonderful program to get the 0 to 5-year-old kids get a good start, and I want to congratulate Dr. Romero for being there, having her staff there to participate and volunteer your time to make sure everything was successful. Congratulations to you, Dr. Romero. Mr. Chairman, that's all.
Thank you. Frank?
In my travels around the district, I'm hearing rumors about some of our athletes using steroids, and I think that we should start to do something about it, start to investigate, see what is happening, because I think this is very serious. Thank you.
Hector?
No report, sure.
Charlotte?
I'd like to give congratulations to all of the Nogales High School students. I attended the Honors Award Program at the high school on, I believe it was Thursday last week. evening last week, and it was very informative. We have a lot of very outstanding students at the high school receiving wonderful honors. There was a numerous number of students that had exceeded on the Ames exams on all 3 exams, and were going to be getting their certificates for reduction in tuition if they continue into higher education in the state of Arizona. There were numerous students that received the President's Award, and it was very uplifting to see all of those students up there holding their plaques signed by President Obama. And Judith, I believe she's here. Her signature was on those beautiful awards that were handed out. We do have great kids in this district that do very well, and every kid in this district has the potential to do well. And it's because of the teachers in this district and the administration in this district, and I want to congratulate all of them.
Thank you, John. I have one note. Attended last month the National School Board Associations of America national meeting in Boston, and it was a fantastic weekend, just incredibly well attended. The seminars and breakout sessions they had were very informative. The highlight, though, was the opening ceremonies on Saturday morning, where the Nogales Mariachi High School Band opened up with, I think it was 3 songs, and they got a standing ovation. No one called for it. Everyone in unison stood up, and people, when we're going back to the hotel on buses, that's all I heard the buzz about, was about these kids and what they're doing out of this small border community. So some of y'all were there also and then saw this, and I'm sure you've already heard about how great the kids were, but it was very proud to be affiliated with those kids and the performance they put on. Steve can probably tell you some more.
Well, it was certainly a highlight for me. I got to tell you, I'll just cut to the chase. I felt like we were a little bit robbed, because I think that the people in the audience, which there were thousands, probably wanted to listen more to the mariachis than they wanted to listen to the keynote speaker. But what they did is, at the end of their allotted time, they were able to go down onto the conference floor, where there was another stage, and there were just people standing room, crowding around there. It was just really nice, and I'll just echo what you said, Dr. Nash. I felt very proud. The kids were outstanding, well behaved. Just the comments that I received as I was walking around with my mariachi shirt, so they knew exactly who I was affiliated with, and I'm sure that the other folks that came, and even folks that live out in the East Coast that have allegiances here in Arizona, people from Arizona coming up to me and just saying how well we were represented, and I think everybody was proud. So I just thought it was amazing, but I wasn't shocked, because I expected them to be amazing. I told Carla that I was a little nervous, and I went in the back where they were warming up, and they weren't nervous at all. I was the one that was sort of nervous. But they went out there like superstars, and just went about their business and did exactly what we expected them to do. It was amazing. Not surprised, but it was fantastic. So.
Thank you. All right, next item 4, superintendent's report. Steve?
Probably the shortest superintendent's report ever. Just a reminder that this Wednesday at the Americana, 6 p.m., there will be a retirement dinner. We have approximately 17 individuals that are retiring, amassing about 340 years worth of combined experience. So we hope that you can make it. You should, on the second item, President Nash, month of May, calendar events, you should receive a sort of an item. Looks like this is going to go into the newspaper. But just the next couple weeks are very, very busy weeks. And obviously the graduations are probably things that take the most. If you could fit it into your schedule to attend these, that would be great. And then item C and D, student activities, auxiliary operations, and the summary budget report. That's all I have.
Item 5, information and discussion items. a joint technology educational district.
This is going to be tag team between Mr. Kramer. I'm uncertain if Mr. Parra might chime in, but this was an item that we've actually talked about in the past. It resurfaced as a future agenda item from one of our board members, Dr. Verona. So we're here to at least talk about that, the pros and the cons, and if at the end of this discussion, if the governing board is ready to move forward on such an initiative, we can put it before an action item because the general election is coming up. So we're just going to hear what Mr. Kramer has to say. I know that Rio Rico does have this already in place because it was approved in a measure about, what, 4 years ago?
Yes.
So we'll let him go ahead and take it, and you can ask questions. I guess ask questions if you want, Dr. Nash, as we go. So.
All right, thank you, Steve. And good evening, governing board members, Dr. Nash. I guess Mr. Zimmerman was saying the pros and cons. I don't have any cons up here, so I don't think we can discuss any cons. But I certainly, and yes, the information was, we talked about it a few years ago. Santa Cruz Valley proposed this in 2008, and it was voted on in 2009. So they have been in place for 3 years. I'm going to give you some information, some statistics of why I think, and Mr. Zimmerman, Mr. Pata, and there are others that are involved in this, why we believe we should be looking at getting a JTED. What is a JTED? And I believe, board members, I gave you a packet that the state Senate brief from this last December was giving you some information, so some of this will already be covered. A JTED is a program that is separate from our district, and it helps fund CTE, or vocational programs, grades 8 through 12. I'll get into the 8th and 9th because Carla was going to probably question that as well, but I will just give the information regarding 8th and 9th graders and why I put it in there. Why is it JTED for Nogales students? Well, a recent survey, and this was taken this past February, January, by the Arizona Small Business Association, showing that their emphasis is obviously K through 12 schools, but their second choice was we should be funding JTEDs higher than what it is. Currently, it's at 91%. This was released, and I got this from the Daily Star, February 9th, 2012. Why do we need a JTED? This is data from the U.S. Census 2010. As you can see, there's a black cloud hanging over the first 3-4 areas because 38% of the people in this country have a bachelor's degree or higher. So what is the rest of the people doing in this country? Well, how are we as helping the rest of those people in this country? Currently in Arizona, 16 out of 100 students of 9th graders who graduate from high school on time go to college and graduate within 6 years. 50% of the graduates don't qualify to enroll in Arizona's public universities. This data was taken from the Board of Regents from 2006. And we know that 85% of the jobs in Arizona will require some secondary degree, being an associate's or bachelor's. Yet only 38%, again, of our students, and that actually 38%, as you know, I did the presentation on Pearson last year, that was from Harvard, 38% is 26 years old and above. So what are we doing with the 19 to 25-year-olds? What are the factors? Provides specific skills, licenses, as we've shown with our great program that Nogales High School and Pearson are working together with our CNA program. I came to you in January when the question was, or February, and I believe Dr. Verona said, what can we do? Well, those students are getting certification for being a CNA. They also do well on AIMS. I believe the data, especially at Nogales High School, will show that. I believe that Ms. Fontes, and prior to that, many years, from 2000, Dr. Verona, when you were there with Ms. Copley, the data was showing that it was true. So this isn't something new. JTIDs will also help with our economy. And that's what, again, the Arizona Business Association is wanting us to do. It's about hands-on. And I've always said that hands-on education is the best way, engaging the students. This data was taken just recently, obviously last week. This is a school district in Florida where their graduation rate with CTE students is 95. The rest of the district is 78. This is with 10 high schools in the district. They have everyone on board with this. Granted, again, as I said, hands-on experience. They have a higher grade point average. They do better in the advanced placement exams. And 85% of them have a vision of what they want to do after they graduate from high school. Here's the main cog. This could be the con, Mr. Zimmerman. The cost. It's $5 for every $100,000 assessed value of your home. So those that are living in Santa Cruz Valley Unified School District can tell you it's not that much. For those that are living in Tubac, the average is $12 a year. And the reason why I say Tubac, because obviously there are homes that are a little more higher appraised up there. So $5 for every 100,000. And I guarantee if you ask parents, are you willing to give $5 to help your kid? That is the assessed, I just put that, I was guesstimating. It's not accurate, but it's close, ballpark figures. That's the assessed value, and I will get to that in the next few slides. The funding for this year is still at 91% state aid funding. However, and that's for grades 10, 11, and 12. However, the local property tax assessment, you can fund 9th grade and expand it to include 8th grade students. So this figure right here can be used to educate 8th graders and 9th graders, according to the state. They just passed this recently. Here's some funding that the WAVE JTED up north, and you can see what the high schools are receiving. This was the 100-day enrollment figures, what they got this past February. I got it right out of their board reports. Mojave High School, Lake Havasu, Kingman. That's what they're getting to fund their CTE programs. If we are able to move forward, obviously this will enhance our existing programs, expand new programs. Of course, professional development is always a key when you're starting new programs and trying to make your programs that much better. This is the state list of classes, and there are many, and Ms. Fontes and I were looking at this. The classes up there, you have a wide range of them, and there are areas that you could fit into it. There's certainly solar power, solar energy, anything that you can come with solar, you can hit it in these categories. Nogales High School has a few of these. We have 2. Ms. Miranda, you have 2, correct? So we have 3 programs with the nursing program. So there are many programs here that we could expand on or create. One of them could be fire science, which I believe Santa Cruz Valley is pursuing for this next year. EMTs, and I didn't realize this. One semester, they take the class, and if they pass their test, they can become EMT certified. I guess that would be getting, as what did you say, a bang for your buck on that one. What is the cost and timeline if we were to do this? It will cost between $15,000 and $20,000 for the election, but if it passes, the JTED would pick up that tab. If it fails, obviously NUSD is stuck with the tab. Timelines are usually 10 months. I know that we could do it in 6 months if we really tried. It has to go on to the general election. So it would either be this fall or wait. which would be 3 years out before you actually start your programming. 2.5 years, actually, if we waited till November 2013. This is a map from 2011. These are all the JTEDs and high schools that have the JTEDs. As you can look, Yuma is one of the few high school districts in that area that does not have JTEDs. And of course, we're down here. And right here's Patagonia. But you have to connect to the colors, like dot to dots. We can't jump over and connect with other of these. We have to go there, or if Patagonia was interested, we could create one with Patagonia right here. Or you could join the existing Pima JTED, or we can join and here are the, obviously, Pima College and other high schools are involved in this. By joining them, that cuts the overhead as far as the administration is already in place. So you wouldn't have to look at creating that. And yes, there would be transportation costs if we had to bus students up to Tucson. That's the real world of CTE classes.
Mr. Kramer, can you tell us how things are going over in Rio Rico? It's been 3 years, and if that's been beneficial, if it was a good move for them. I don't know anything about what I know that they passed a few years ago, but I haven't tracked to see whether or not it's been beneficial for them. And I know that you also serve on the board there, so I figure you might have some intimate knowledge as to whether it's been successful.
It certainly has. Those of you that have driven on Interstate 19, you've seen the expansion of the greenhouse. Granted, that's an FFA program going as well. We've expanded that program. They are working on the culinary arts that hasn't been in place. They had the CNA program, but they're expanding on that program. I believe we are looking to bus a few students up to Pima College and possibly Salarita for some of the programs that aren't offered, but we are trying to expand into fire science and EMT as well. So we were allocated, I believe, $223,000 last year for our programs, to enhance our programs, and to create opportunities for the students, as I just said. So as a board member, yes, I think it's well worth it. The survey that was done 4 years ago, it was done in Nogales because of their predominant businesses. 96%, or I'll say 26 out of 28 businesses, thumbs up. They wanted it. They said, yes, we support it. Because some of those business owners obviously lived in Santa Cruz Valley. So the feedback from the community at that time, I know the economy, and we all understand all that, has taken a downside. But I'm sure that just as you just saw in Pima County and the Arizona small businesses, they want to keep improving the JTED programs.
Mr. Kramer, you said that there's programs that are not being offered right now, so you're considering shipping students there that are part of the JTED program in Santa Cruz Valley up to Pima and up to Sahuarita. Is it because you can't get instructors to come down here, or would we be faced with the same type of obstacles? Finding instructors to provide the services for CTE instruction?
Yes, that's part of yes, because there are instructors already in place, and the JTED, because we're part of the Pima County JTED, so we're being allocated the money to transport kids up because of that reason. And they're taking some of them at Pima Community College.
But my question is more, is it because we can't get instructors to come down and do the educating there say at Rio Rico High School or wherever it needs to be, wherever the facility is?
I think it was a program that's in place that it was feasible just to send them up there rather than.
It was more cost effective.
Right, it was cost effective, thank you, yes, it was cost effective.
Okay.
Not that we couldn't get the teachers, but we certainly we are going to, like I said, create the programs that we know we can get people for fire science and EMT to do.
Is the instructions or the instructional environment, is it an online instruction environment or is it a classroom environment? You said because you're talking about hands-on, so I'm wondering, is it a hands-on, you're in a physical location where the students are hands-on with an instructor, or is it internet-based provided instruction?
It can be both.
It can be both.
Blended technology, and I believe that Ms. Fontes is working on with the gentleman that's doing the automobile, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Mendoza, but the gentleman that I actually spoke with, because he was down from New Mexico, he told me, do you want to start a program at your school? Because there is one class you can do strictly online. The basics you can do online. So to answer your question in the long run, yes, you can have some classes that are computer-based. But of course, he said level 2, which is in the hands-on of actually working. But what he did say was technology is the most important aspect that he's looking at now, because it's not about hands-on so much. It's about the students knowing how to hook the car up to the computer. And they must have technology skills, he said.
Joel, how many students are participating in the Santa Cruz district?
It's like playing Stump the Band. You're-
Do you get a lot of buy-in? I mean, do you
Yes,
have
we do get, yes.
hundreds of students?
There's, I would say on the number, probably 250 to 300 students that are involved in this out of 1,000 students. So there is the buy-in, certainly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kramer, I'm very supportive of this, but I would like to have something, Superintendent Zimmerman, that's a little bit more concrete as to what the projected budget allocation is going to be and what programs in particular is going to happen here in the district. Are we going to offer new programs? Are we going to enhance present programs? It's hard to go out to the voters or anything and just say, well, I support vocational education. At one time, I was not a vocational ed supporter. The one who convinced me of the value of vocational education at the time when I was at the middle school was Mr. Morales, because Mr. Morales, especially the kids who weren't doing well, was able, because of his skills and vocation and what he had to offer, was able to retain a lot of those kids to be successful in the classroom and move on to the high school. But in order for me, I would like to place it on another agenda, but it's got to be a little bit more specific. This is, to me, a broad overview. But in order for me to say, yes, I am favored to go to the taxpayers, I need to know exactly what programs are you going to be building into here. And backing up to Mrs. Suarez's question, we have a provisional community college here. That provisional community college can go ahead and hire the instructors and everything for what you would need over here and not have to send students up to Pima Community College. That's the purpose of the the provisional community college district here. The provisional community college has an agreement with Cochise Community College to provide whatever services we need. The taxpayers of this community pay for those instructors. So there's no need for our students to go up to Pima Community College. All of it can be done right here on our county. But that's the only thing, Superintendent. I do favor this. I do want to move forward, but it's got to be more specific. I think Mr. Kramer's overall presentation is good. It's a good start, but we need to focus in. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No more questions? Thank you, Mr. Green.
Thank you.
Second item, teacher evaluation.
Teacher evaluations, I think we are having a tag team on this. This is more so for an update, because later on in the agenda you'll see that there is something that's affiliated with this item, which is the Marzano eye observation action item. But we've been giving you reports over the last few months. Who's taking this? Is this going to be Mr. Fredericks?
Yes, Mr. Frederick and Dr. Romero.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Zimmerman, members of the board. I just wanted to briefly share with you again the names of the employees of the teachers that have been giving of their time to assist with the new teacher evaluation instrument. And of course, Ms. Canto and I have been the co-chair people for the co-facilitators, really, because that's what we've been doing, is facilitating. But we want to give a special thanks to the members of the committee, which include Judith Mendoza Jimenez, principal of Nogales High School, John Molera, principal of Desert Shadows Middle School, Michelle Olguin, principal of Bracker Elementary School, Dr. Lucina Romero, principal of Lincoln Elementary School. Then teachers for A.J. Mitchell Elementary School, David Thompson, Penelope Fonserrada from Bracker Elementary School, Omar Valencia from Challenger Elementary School, Lily McPherson from Coronado Elementary School, Maria Newman from Desert Shadows Middle School, Libby McAfee from Nogales High School, Larry Frederick from Lincoln Elementary School, Chris Miranda from Pearson Vocational High School, Allison Smith from Wade Carpenter Middle School, and Mirna Alaves from Welty Elementary School. Just to commend the teachers, they've been really awesome in their dialogue and in the information and the sharing of ideas that they've had, sharing back with their sites the information that we've been discussing periodically, and then bringing back to the committee good dialogue, good ideas, and we've really been working hard on it, even though we haven't always agreed. We've come to a lot of consensus and shared really great information. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Larry Frederick and Dr. Romero, who will be presenting the update. Also, are you going to be first, Angel? We actually have this item second on the agenda for the update on the House Bill 2823.
That is item C.
It's MC.
And actually, if we could present that first, do we think, did you want to do that? No? Okay. So we'll have Mr. We think that if we could present the update on the House bill, that it might help you understand the update on the teacher evaluation, but they both do really flow nicely together. So I'll hand it over to Mr. Frederick.
Good evening. If I can figure out how to make this work. There we go. I'm used to Mac, so I get a little confused with Windows. The Teacher Evaluation Committee has been meeting for several months now with representatives from across the district to develop a new system of teacher evaluation that will comply with the new requirements set down by the state legislature. This is the HB 2823 that Ms. Canto will present in just a few moments. Recently, we attended 2 summits hosted by the Arizona Department of Education designed to help districts learn how to provide effective teacher evaluation. And at these summits, we heard some of the top people from across the country in this field. Other than the fact that we have to do it, though, why do we assess teacher performance? Well, the first reason is for quality assurance. We take public money for the public good. We should be able to go to the public at any moment and say, all our educators are good, and here is the evidence. Second, we assess teacher performance to promote professional learning. There should be a career-long quest to help teachers become better teachers. We can't fire our way out of the problems that we face. We need to help people know where they are, where they're going, and how to get there. A quality teacher evaluation system that provides high quality in teacher competency has, first, a clear definition of teaching. Second, instruments and procedures that provide evidence of teaching. Third, trained evaluators who can make accurate and consistent judgments based on evidence. Fourth, professional development for teachers to understand the evaluative criteria. And fifth, a process for making a final assessment of teacher effectiveness. Such a system must also be legally defensible, and this should have several components. First, it should be a validated instrument. Second, it should have a process to train and certify observers. Third, it should include software tools for observers to record observation data. And fourth, it should include formulae to roll up observation ratings and teacher data into an overall score. The state is now required that every teacher receive at least 2 formal observations each year of complete and uninterrupted lessons that will be combined to make a final evaluation of teacher performance. The state also requires that at least half of the evaluation be based on teacher performance. As a committee, we're recommending that it be increased to 67% of the total evaluation. The remaining 33% will be based on student achievement data. These two pieces are then combined to produce an overall evaluation rating. If a teacher receives a rating of ineffective, that teacher then has 1 year to increase his or her rating. After a second year of receiving an ineffective rating, the district must implement dismissal policies. All of this has raised some serious concerns. First, our current evaluation tool does not meet the new criteria outlined in statute, and producing a similar instrument, as we've done in the past, will not meet the new requirements. Even more, since a low performance rating for 2 consecutive years would require that dismissal proceedings be implemented, and because overall performance ratings will soon affect a portion of the 301 money that a teacher receives, it's extremely important that the evaluation used be research-based and legally defensible. Finally, we must have a system of professional development in place to identify and address weaknesses that are discovered during an evaluation. This will ensure that we help all teachers grow and improve, and this is an important goal of a good evaluation system. Thank you. Unless we receive an extension, the new evaluation system needs to be in place by the beginning of next year. Even if we receive the extension, it only gives us 1 more year. It takes a great deal of expertise to write the teacher performance piece of an evaluation instrument, and a great deal of time to verify that the observational data correlates with student achievement data. Based on all these considerations, we believe that purchasing a professional performance evaluation system that has already been developed would be the wisest choice. We need something that has been used successfully by other districts around the country and is being examined by our own state for their model as well. We need something that is research-based. It should provide professional development to make sure that we can address and remedy any weaknesses once we find them. We believe that the Marzano model meets all these criteria. It's been used successfully to evaluate teachers in districts across the country. Additionally, there have been studies showing a strong correlation between high implementation of the Marzano model and increased math and reading test scores. The system also uses software called iObservation that allows observers to enter information during the observation using virtually any device that can access the internet, a computer, an iPad, even a smartphone. The teacher who was observed is immediately notified via email and can see the results of the observation online, which meets statutory requirements. The Marzano model encourages administrators to do multiple formal observations, informal observations, and brief walkthroughs. More data helps teachers improve their teaching in ways that have a positive impact on their teaching. The unanimous opinion of the committee is that this is the most cost-effective way that we can implement the required evaluation process, since it is legally defensible, provides proven reliability, includes a well-defined system of professional development that will help teachers at any level improve, and has been shown to achieve our most important goal, helping students learn more effectively. As such, we would like to recommend its purchase and implementation to the governing board.
Tall people. Ooh. Hi. Yes. Slideshow from the beginning. Okay, I can do it. Okay, and this is the. Okay. Short people. Tall people. Okay, now I can do this. The role of administrator has always been to help teachers to do the best job of instruction possible so that our students can learn, grow, and succeed. It is our hope that this new evaluation process can help with this task. Good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the board, Superintendent Zimmerman, and audience members. I am Dr. Lucina Romero, proud principal of Lincoln Elementary, and a member of the Teacher Evaluation Committee. The committee was invited to visit Chandler Unified School District to attend a presentation by Wendy Nance, Director of Human Resources for Chandler Unified. Chandler Unified has been piloting a teacher evaluation system this past year. The following is a brief overview of what Ms. Nance presented to the committee members who attended this session. Chandler Unified serves 38,000 students in grades K-12, encompasses 80 square miles. It has over 40 schools, 29 elementaries, 7 junior highs, 4 high schools, and 2 alternative schools. District office staff received training regarding the Marzano framework, which is eye observation. And then they trained the site administrators along with a teacher leader for each site. She showed us how they completed their trainings across this very large school district, and she ensured that there is consistency amongst the evaluators. The teachers, of course, have also received training as well, and these are the reasons why their district went with this model. They also had a committee such as ours, but theirs included around 80 people on their committee. Chandler Unified reviewed several research models and selected eye observation. They have piloted Domain 1 this year, and they will continue with the other domains this next year. Domain 1 has the most elements and thus carries the most weight. This model shows teachers how to plan and teach a lesson by focusing on strategies which are designed to raise student learning. A total of 60 elements are included within this framework and in 4 different domains, which have been shown to enhance teaching and increase student achievement. The elements. It is not possible to do all 60 elements in one observation or even in 1 week of teaching. Some elements or strategies are not appropriate for some subjects, some areas, or groups of students, etc. Poor implementation of these strategies may lead to student regression. But overall, this instrument makes it so that whatever an evaluator, an administrator sees in that classroom is not punitive to the teachers. It is not a penalty to not observe certain elements. Other programs that are out there do give a 0 rating if the element is not observed. And so this is a fair model for our staff members, for our teachers. The Marzano model uses a tool called eye observation. When an administrator observes a teacher now or evaluates, this evaluation observer takes notes, and then the observer or the evaluator goes back and types up the formal evaluation. Of course, feedback is provided to the teacher by the administrator. But with eye observation, the teacher who is observed is immediately notified, as Mr. Frederick clearly stated, via email, so that the teacher can see the results instantaneously. And this also helps us meet statutory requirements. The Marzano model encourages administrators to do multiple formal observations, informal observations, and brief walkthroughs. With this system, the top-level administrator, superintendent, assistant superintendent, can keep track of the observations that the evaluators are actually implementing and inputting. As Mr. Frederick stated before, the eye observation allows observers to enter the information via any device that can access the internet, whether it be a computer in the teacher's classroom, a laptop that the administrator carries around, an iPad, or even a smartphone. Then again, this is shared with the teacher via email. The model provides online professional development that will help teachers grow professionally. They do not have to wait long lengths of time to have professional development provided for them by an outside agency or the administrator or another certified or classified staff member. This means that issues can be remedied quickly. You get a cycle of continuous professional growth and improvement instead of frustration. The teachers receive immediate feedback, and the ones who benefit the most from all this are our students. The system is set up to do full observations, more frequent, shorter, informal observations, and then, of course, the short walkthroughs. The final evaluation is based on the points which are derived from the information or the data that is inputted by the administrator. Ms. Nance provided us with a time frame for the duration and frequency for the observations, the walkthroughs, and the evaluation process itself. She reported that the program is working for them. It is meeting their needs, the needs of the teachers, the needs of the administrators, and the needs of the superintendent and assistant superintendents, while complying with new statutory requirements. It is our hope as a committee that we can use this as an opportunity to help improve our instruction across our district, raising academic achievement. And as Mr. Frederick stated earlier, it is our recommendation as a committee that we purchase this system for use in teacher evaluations. Thank you.
Any questions from the board? Charlotte?
What's the cost?
$71,000
Plus $20,000 a year.
plus $20,000 a year.
Actually, we could, I know this is an action item, we were gonna get to that, but we can talk about it now if you'd like, at least what the costs are. So, Angel, would you please come up?
Would you like me to address that first versus jumping into the House bill? Okay. Yeah, the cost is $71,000 for the first year of implementation. That includes the training, then the ongoing costs thereafter for the ability to use the data system, warehouse that information would be approximately $20,000 a year. We would be able to, that was obviously a concern when we're looking at this, but we also realized that whether we're paying teachers or purchasing outside trainers to help certify administrators, et cetera, there's unfortunately going to be a cost. For this particular instrument, that cost, I think, gives us a big bang for our buck with the training that we'll be receiving. This is really something unprecedented to what we've done before in the past with our evaluation instrument. We also, when we're looking at the funding, this is very much a Title II. It can be used out of grants to be able to fund this instrument. And Title II funds are very limited in the number of things that you're able to spend those on, and that's where it would be our intention, should the board decide to allow us to adopt this as part of our instrument, to purchase this through.
So are we looked at the impact on the budget going forward, and we would have the funding through Title II?
Title II.
Yes, ma'am.
And that Title II would also cover the initial cost of the instrument, or just the ongoing
No.
sustainability of the product?
The initial and then in the future, because as I think was discussed earlier, these are generally more stable funds looking at our ESEA funding with Title I and Title II. And there are actually very limited things that you can spend this money on, but this is one that the federal government has added in. Given the race to the top and the other things going on nationally that are requiring this type of evaluation system to be in place, so this is tweaked to where you can purchase this out of Title II.
Okay, Dr.
Romero.
Romero said that it also provides for professional development for teachers, for online professional development. So is that, the instrument itself, is the professional development geared towards whatever the instructor is needing to improve on? Or is it going to provide professional development in other areas as well, therefore maybe reducing our cost for professional development funds in other areas?
I would agree that it's both. When we're talking about professional development, part of the professional development is for both the administrators and the teachers, as Dr. Romero was indicating, in just the observation protocol itself and what the elements and the domains are. Then the additional, when she was showing you the eye observation library, those are resources that an administrator could assign to a teacher if through observation I've identified this is an area of need or something we'd like to see improvement. But the really...
Requested
Yes, the really cool part is that it doesn't have to be assigned to you. As a teacher, I have access to that library, and even if my administrator has not identified that, suppose that I'm meeting, but I'd like to move to that higher level, I can access this information to continue to expand and develop myself professionally as well, so both.
Will that generate an additional cost to the district?
No, that's included in the product.
Thank you.
Let me ask a quick question. If the governing board was not to approve this, what would be the alternative?
We would have to try to, with stipends and for teachers and the committee members to work, to pay them to make their own out of the INTAS standards. I would quote Charlotte Danielson, who was one of the renowned folks that Mr. Frederick was referring to, that said this is not something to try at home. Hence, there's a number of states that you saw that are not trying this at home, and even our own state in the model that they're proposing and making available under the House bill. They're actually looking at both of these instruments as well as part of what they're looking to encourage folks to use. So a great deal, we would still be spending a lot of money. You have to train the evaluators. We would have to identify and create that training. We'd have to spend some money on stipends trying to create and translate those INTAS standards into an evaluation protocol. They really don't do that particularly well. They don't translate directly into an observational protocol, so that would take some time to wrestle with. And then really to understand that you would need to spend some time making sure there was some predictive validity to whatever it is that we did come up with for that protocol. Those would be some of the things that I would see us having to do.
Do we have the expertise, in your opinion?
I think that there's a reason that Ms. Danielson and Dr. Marzano make as much money as they do, and it's because it does require a tremendous amount of expertise and years of research to be able to do this.
One more question before I let anyone else speak. In the presentation, you had the state of Arizona. Do you feel that the state of Arizona Board of Education will make a determination that this is not the protocol that they want to use in the future, and it would wind up being only in place for a short amount of time, or that they would choose something else? Or is this something that you get a feeling that the state maybe?
Honestly, the state isn't nice enough like some of the others listed to say, here's what you're going to be using. It's all up to us unless you choose to adopt their instrument, which they were encouraging and asking folks to sign up at the summit. The only bad part is that they haven't finalized what that looks like. So they were asking you to sign on board for something that they haven't finalized yet. They're going out for RFP. Their instrument has some survey components that they're looking to contract out for, as well as the performance piece. So they're in the midst of contracting now. They appear to be favoring Charlotte Danielson, which is why I suspect they courted her down to present at the summit. But she's a tough little cookie, and she doesn't allow any tweaking at all to her instrument, which they were hoping for some flexibility. So I'm not sure how that's going to come out through their RFP process, but that's only necessary if you adopt their instrument. Some states do that and mandate that you adopt all of their instrument. Our state has allowed us flexibility, which sounds great before you get into all of this, and then that flexibility means a lot of work on our end.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have one question, but kind of a lead into it. The state is mandating this. You're telling us it's
Yes, sir.
easier to not have to reinvent the wheel and go get some specialized package that we can use as a model, and that makes some sense to me. My question goes to this. The slide presentation talked about legal defensibility, and I'm actually curious to hear what you have to say about, I'm thinking about the flip side of that. You were talking about legal defensibility as it relates to the fairness of the process, so that a teacher is treated fairly, and you give them an opportunity to cure if they have shortcomings, and And if they don't do that within 2 years, you let them go, or you have a process for doing that. I worry a little bit on the opposite end of the spectrum. If you have this system in place and the teacher has been passing very well, and no real problems, no real issues about improvement or anything else. As a board, are we creating some kind of right of retention that, oh geez, I mean, you can't let me go, or the principal can't let me go because I've been evaluated and my evaluation has been strong. I'm curious to know how a board policy deals with that situation where the teacher's response to being not renewed or moved by a principal because they don't fit in their system or they don't get along says, well, you can't really do that. You know, you have your evaluation instrument, and I've passed it with flying colors, so I'm concerned about now they're feeling that they're entitled to be retained and be retained where they want to be, where they were. What would you comment about that?
That's actually going to be addressed pretty directly in the House bill. They're actually putting in some verbiage requiring boards to pass policies relating to exactly that issue that we will be required to follow in the years to come. So certainly with the inclusion of data, where in the past, obviously none of us in our district, this state, other states have looked at the way we've rated, the way we've assigned those performance classifications, and if there was any correlation to student achievement. This is a whole new game. So yes, in what we're showing you now, we'll actually be required to address what could be that issue. Hopefully it will not be, but I can't say that it would not be.
Thank you.
No
Frank?
question, no questions.
Marcy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What are the other what are the other research-based programs that you looked at?
For this, Charlotte Danielson was something that they were presenting at the summit. They mentioned James Strong. I don't believe he's as well known, certainly, as either of those are. Danielson's model, the issue that I would suggest that would be there is it's rather constructivist in nature. It's very much student-centered and all centered around what the student's doing to receive the highest performance rating, not centered around what the teacher is actually doing for that highest performance rating. Whereas with the Marzano, what I think appealed to us was the obvious research base that's associated with him, particularly as it pertains to instructional strategies. And it really is very much focused on what the teacher is doing, which I think is the fairest way to conduct these observations and for that performance piece.
You visited Chandler Unified. On any of these other programs that you alluded to right now, did you visit any sites to actually see what you're pronouncing right now?
We did not. Chandler was the one that once we had looked at Marzano that we had went there for a visit.
So why didn't you look at the other ones? Why didn't you go out and visit and so you can make and talk to other people to see if that is the best one? I mean,
I think really from our conversations and looking at what we wanted out of an observation instrument, this was really what seemed to be the best fit. So certainly Danielson would be an alternative. We just chose not to do that we liked what we saw with the Marzano.
And TUSD is doing Marzano?
TUSD is still up in the air. I expect that they'll be looking at the extension. So it's the three that are being implemented across the state, the ones that they were showing us at the summit were, there's a small district that's looking at James Strong and his materials. There are some that are looking at Charlotte Danielson. For example, Marana implements that one, and then there are a number that are looking at the Marzano. And the state has not finalized what direction they're going or if they will have both as options, so I'm just not sure what to expect there.
And these other programs that you looked at but you didn't actually perform a site visitation, how do they compare cost-wise? is there a reoccurring, like a $20,000 annual fee every year perpetually?
Yeah, oh, yes. Yes, there's a fee associated with those. There's even one that, I know I looked at with the PD 360 that doesn't even provide the performance walkthrough. You're just paying for the PD, and that's an annual cost of $79,000 every year. It never goes down. So there's certainly other directions you can take. I don't think any of them are less expensive than the one that we're examining.
Mr. Chairman, Superintendent Zimmerman, on House Bill 2823, what I read and I enjoyed is that the teachers who score the highest are able to get multi-year contracts. You're able to give them incentives. You're able to move them to D and F schools. In my opinion, it should be C, D, and F schools. Could you share your thoughts on that?
I agree. But I know we're diving into 2823 right now.
Do you want me to dive?
Not yet. I want to make a comment about what we were just talking about. As long as I've been in education, I've heard the same thing over and over and over from the very same people that might be sitting in this room, teachers, administrators, is that evaluation instruments are subjective and they lack specificity. Even in the group when we had we heard it at the summit, we heard it during the discussions with the committee, and many people would say, you know, I'm concerned about the evaluator, because I think that what comes out once in a while is we fear this, is that there's the good old boy system, that somebody, all they do is do some walkthroughs and write a couple notes, and I think that is what Mr. Arano was alluding to. Sometimes it can go that way. And at the end of the day, where I sit is it still comes down to the evaluator, and it really comes down to following I don't know exactly how many we're going to do in terms of, I know that Chandler's doing 40 of the strands. We wanted to make sure that when teachers took a look at this, is that they would feel comfortable knowing that, you know, sometimes it's good to go to the outside and get somebody. I know that we have some neighboring districts that are attempting to do this on their own, and we don't know whether or not they are compliant or not. We just feel as a committee that it would behoove us to move forward on this, and that's why it's an action item a little bit later. We went to 3 summits, we heard things. We read things, because I know that the committee came back and they did a lot of research. They may not have gone out and personally observed it, but I don't think there's probably that many Danielson takers right now that are up there. Marzano seems to be the one, because he meets the needs of most of the things that we were looking at as a committee and addressing the interests and the concerns that came out of the committee. So, you know, I just wanted to say that when I purposely asked the question, knowing the answer, what is the alternative? The alternative is that we do it. And when we do it, we still may have people questioning maybe the integrity of the instrument and what we were looking at. And I think, though I don't like to spend a lot of money and don't like to outsource a lot of things, in this case, that is why it was my recommendation putting it down as an action item. I think it's important. I just wanted to say that. Why don't you cover the House bill, and then I'll tell you my thoughts about a few bullets, actually, that I even brought up during our committee meeting.
Well, maybe I got ahead of myself. I apologize, Mr.
okay.
Chairman. Let me finish with my questioning on this eye observation. Mr. Chairman, Dr. Romero, can you give me some examples of you going into a classroom and not observing some of the elements?
It may be that the evaluator is in the classroom and the lesson does not lend itself to certain elements that are within domain 1, for example. Or right now, even with our current evaluation protocol, we may go in and not see some of those elements, but we don't have data points assigned to the current evaluation instrument itself. We mark them depending on the level of the criteria that is given to us under each of the standards right now. But if we go in the teachers are not penalized, for example, if we don't see something not going on, because we do so many walkthroughs. And so at the end of the period, we collect all this information and formulate an evaluation itself. But with this instrument, what would happen is that if there's an element that is not observed due to the age of the group of students, the content, or the course that is being taught, then you don't mark it, because everything is based on a checklist, and you're marking it right then and there using one of those devices that I talked about, via the computer, the iPad, or a smartphone. I can't give you an exact example. Go ahead.
I can. So one of the examples in domain 1 would be that you're administering the consequences for not adhering to a procedure in your classroom. If my classroom is well managed, I may not actually have to do that. So that's not a bad thing, and I wouldn't necessarily observe that then in that classroom. So that's one.
It's just not punitive against the teacher, but you may go in at another time in another short walkthrough, and you do observe that element. So you mark it, you click on it, and then that adds data points for the evaluator at the end of the time period whenever we're told we're going to produce the formal evaluation. All those data points are collected, and then the evaluation rating is given based upon those data points that were collected.
Mr. Chairman, Dr. Romero, what's your definition of defensibility?
Defensibility would be that we have followed all of the statutory requirements and have not infringed on the rights of a teacher, that we have met all board policies that you will develop according to the state statute and requirements and according to House Bill 2823, that we are not hurting any teacher, and so we are not infringing upon their rights, that we are giving them every opportunity to improve, so that we recommend continued employment. To me, that is defensibility, that if we take any case, any improvement plan to our HR director, and our HR director collects all our data, all our information, all our walkthroughs and observations, which, as I mentioned before, Superintendent Zimmerman and Assistant Superintendent Parra would have access to. They can see we have followed the protocols and all the legal statutory requirements. Then HR director would send that off to the lawyers, and they would see this evaluator followed all the processes, and then the teacher, we did not violate their rights, and therefore they make a recommendation to you, the board, to terminate a teacher or not renew contract. That's defensibility to me, making sure that we have crossed our T's, dotted our I's, followed all procedures, and have not violated the rights of the teacher.
Mr. Chairman, Dr. Romero, thank you. Your knowledge is in great depth, and I appreciate your explanation.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Superintendent Zimmerman, the House bill.
Okey doke. This one, in a nutshell, it does a number of things, and it affects approximately 10 different statutes, 9 that are currently in effect and adding 1. And what this House bill does is delineates requirements, things that the State Board of Education needs to do, things that the school board will need to do with regards to principal and teacher evaluation down the road, requires ADE to post some best practices so that we can share out what we're all doing, since our state has allowed the flexibility. It delineates requirements for some changes down the road to the Classroom Site Fund, which Mr. Frederick referred to, and includes the option to have an application for alternative timelines, since this is due to be implemented in the fall. With the State Board of Ed, there really isn't a lot there. What they're required to do is look at amending the current framework to include 4 performance classifications. They actually have these in place now. The highly effective, the effective, but instead of developing, it's currently listed in the framework as partially effective. That language will be changed by this statute. And ineffective. Then as a district, before the 13-14 school year, we'll be required to adopt our own definitions about what these classifications mean to us. This legislation also gives permission for the state board to continue to make adjustments periodically to that framework for effectiveness, which part of it will be redefining these categories, and then there will likely be others as we change the data that's available with changes in the A through F that we've talked about before. With the principal evaluations, there's only a couple items here that would be required by statute. By the end of the 13-14 school year, the board would be asked to adopt the instrument with the performance classifications that you've adopted and will be defining. Delineating how we'll be aligning professional development opportunities and relating those to principal evaluations. Developing language or opportunities for incentives for principals in the 2 highest performance classifications. Examples would be things like multi-year contracts up to 3 years, or incentives to work at schools that have the letter grades of D or F. It would also ask that the board provide some language relating to some policy relating to the transfer and contract processes that you would want in place for principals who are found to be in the lower performance classifications. And then last but not least, what this legislation does is allow school districts during the hiring process to share information about an administrator's performance evaluation or classification rating. Most of the changes are falling in teacher evaluation. Part of the bill specifically states that teachers make student learning the primary focus of their professional time, which I think we already understand that is. It has some language in there, or will, in the statutes, which will differentiate. Right now, we have probationary teachers, which are in the first 3 years of teaching, and continuing teachers, which are those in their 4th year and beyond. What this legislation will do is that teachers who are beginning their 4th year, who would normally be called continuing, if they're in those lower performance classifications, they would not be moved to that continuing status. So there would be implications there for the number of formal evaluations done each year, et cetera. What this bill also does, and what the board would be required to do by the 13-14 school year or before that begins, is to adopt policies that would be the incentives that Dr. Verona was referring to for teachers in the highest performance classifications, including the multi-year contracts not to exceed 3 years. The policies would need to have language that would specify the teacher could choose to accept that 3-year contract or ask to instead be issued just the single-year contracts. The acceptance of a 3-year contract would not in any way eliminate their responsibility to maintain that level of performance. It would look for policies to be adopted that give incentives for teachers in the highest performance classifications that are at the DRF schools. Certainly you could go beyond that, I would imagine. Provides protections for teachers who are transferred to schools that are assigned a DRF, and provides protections for teachers if the principal at that school is designated to be in one of the lowest performance classifications. By 15-16, the board would need to adopt policies that provide support and consequences for teachers in the lowest performance classifications. There would need to be language adopted that addresses an intervention option for teachers in the lowest performance classification that would include the use of an improvement plan for those teachers. And the policy would need to specify you can only use this one time. Dismissal policies for those who continue to be in that classification would need to be addressed for a teacher that continues with that classification in the 2nd year. The board would also need to adopt policies, dismissal policies, that if the teacher is not provided this intervention option described above, and then what the dismissal policies would be implemented by the 2nd consecutive year for those teachers in the lowest performance classification. The bill also has language that would change statute to prohibit the transfer of a teacher who has, one of our continuing teachers, who's in the lowest performance classifications to another school. To be able to do that, language would need to be adopted in policy that the board must provide them notice that they are performing inadequately, and that they must have a performance plan in place, an improvement plan in place, and then the board would need to approve that transfer as being in the best interest of the district. And last but not least, we're getting there for the teacher evaluation changes. It would require those two formal, at least twice a year, those formal observations. They're defining that in a way which has never been done before, which is a complete and uninterrupted lesson. So from beginning to end. In the past, we've defined that in terms of 30 minutes. That will no longer be the case here, as when a lesson begins to where it ends. These observations, the statute will be that they need to be separated, these formal observations, by 60 calendar days, and that written feedback on each observation, since those are rolling up into one performance judgment, needs to be provided to the teacher within 10 days. It requires training for the observer to be sure that there's some iterative reliability. It clarifies, and this is, I think, nice, that as you are aware, we're now required to report the number of teachers in each classification to the State Board of Ed so that they can roll that up to the feds. This clarifies in law that that's protected information, that no one could go to the ADE and request to know how Jane Doe at a certain district is performing. They're only reporting aggregate numbers. That would still be private information, not public record. And, however, it would allow in the statute to share out information about the performance requirements as part of the hiring process between districts. And it would require transfer policies to take into consideration what the performance distribution is at a school before staff are moved between schools. So a lot of stuff with that one. As far as the ADE, they would be required to post best practices as they begin collecting the instruments that must be submitted to them as part of the race to the top. They need to post those publicly from a large county such as Maricopa, and post evaluation instruments for small and large districts, as well as smaller counties such as ourselves and charter schools, so that everyone is able to see best practices regarding the things that we talked about, the implementation process, the weightings between the data and the performance, the types of data that's used, qualitative and quantitative, et cetera, for the evaluation. And then the last thing that these statutory changes would do is allow them to develop an evaluation instrument that complies with all of these statutes and the framework for effectiveness that then schools would be allowed to adopt if they so chose. That would be piloted next year. They're hoping to wrap it up in June, and then presumably if you sign on board for that, you would be implementing it in the fall. And then with regards to the classroom site fund, as Mr. Frederick alluded, in the 14-15 school year, the performance classification, the evaluation, will then be tied to some of the Prop 301 monies and the attainment of those. And as we've already discussed, the legislation allows for an alternative timeline. I think the legislators realized that in their haste to get this in place, they kind of hurried people along a little too much. Most states did not have this accelerated of a timeline. And even the state is having a very difficult time meeting it, since they're still not done with their model to present either. So this would allow school districts, boards to delay the implementation to the 13-14 school year as long as we do two things. One, before September, we have a timeline of implementation for that 13-14 school year that you approve. We have a plan for engaging the stakeholders to prepare them, and a plan of how evaluations will guide professional development. And then before December of this year, we'll be required to actually give you the instrument for approval that we would want to implement the next year. And at this point, as was mentioned, we expect that in June we may very well be seeking such an extension. We'll look at, however, to do that, obviously, those timelines and things of that nature are kind of dependent upon the decision that you make tonight and how that would roll out. But that would certainly be something we've discussed. So that's kind of the bill. It's a lot of legislation. Yeah, sorry.
Ready for that answer to your question? This is just my own personal belief. First of all, I believe that it's a shame that we have to have a House bill to tell us to do some of these things. That's the problem I have, because I'm going to tell you, in a couple districts that I've been in, I've already done some of those. I have moved teachers to be some of the teachers that were moved to schools that were lower performing. That's before we even had labels. This was years and years ago, because you had to do what is best. I believe in multi-year contracts for principals. Matter of fact, there are people in this room that have no problem giving a multi-year contract to. And I think, when I say that, I think of a lot of things. I think, as I've been meeting with the principals, I believe that it's not just your instructional leadership, but it's the whole package. Because you can't cut and paste even principals. There are some that are very good instructional leaders. Some are very good at maintaining the climate, maintaining their facilities. They all have a strength, but what you really want in an administrator is somebody who can do it all. And I have some people in this room that are very good at doing that. Same with teachers. I think that we have some teachers that are very, very strong, and I wouldn't mind giving them a 2-year contract, if anything, to show them that we value them. More importantly, to keep them. Hopefully they'll stay, because sometimes, we have people want to move on for other reasons, financial or whatever. I believe in that. Incentives to move teachers from D to F, well, there have been times where I had begged teachers, will you please go to this school? Matter of fact, Maida will tell you I did it this week for a particular school with a couple teachers who wanted to transfer out. And some of them don't mind transferring to the schools that are A schools. It's just like in basketball, Dr. Nash. We have some players that might want to go to the Miami Heat, who are all superstars, and what is their goal? To win the championship. And the thing is that I think it's important for us to try to get the best team possible at all the schools. So I believe in all of this. I really do. I think that, I'll tell you, we were, when I was at the Lazat conference, they were talking that there are many districts now in the East and in the Midwest who are telling teachers that, or principals, that they have to rotate every 3 years to another school. Because there's also some advantages, but there are disadvantages once in a while to be staying at the same school too. But I've seen it go both ways. I've seen it where a particular principal had been there and they maintain that high quality the whole time. Why mess with it if it isn't broke? The key is really to get principals to become better at what they do, understanding what our mission is, and understanding that they have support to move forward on doing some things. But I can tell you, when this came out, I was looking at, I agree. I think the bottom line is that we want to have all A schools, don't we?
Right.
Isn't that what the goal is? And I think that we have to do our very best to do that. It's not so much, and it becomes political once in a while. Let's say that you had somebody who you know is very strong in one thing, weak in another, and let's say hypothetically I wanted to non-renew them. It can become political. And I got to tell you, from where I sit, it's doing what's best for the school and the kids, not just because who they might be and the connections that they might be. Are we going to do what is best? Because many times I'll get parents come in, you know what they say to me? But they're so nice. They're nice people. Yes, they are. Matter of fact, everybody in this room are very nice people. And some of them are very effective, and some are trying to get better at what they do. That is just my own sort of philosophy about trying to make this an organization that's going to succeed and get the results.
Any questions from the board?
Just a cynical comment from me. I agree. If the state is going to try and tell us all what to do in this fashion, it just doesn't work. But this is a lawyer's haven, this type of legislation.
It sure is, isn't it?
I can assure you that there is nothing we will be able to do as a board to be able to craft policies in such a fashion that ultimately we'll be able to legally enforce the types of things that we want to do. So it's just...
Yep,
It's
and
not-
I
it's not-
imagine that this may go away, so when you're asking questions about the longevity of these types of things, Mrs. Suarez, who knows?
That's it from me.
Anyone else?
I try to stay away
Just
from
a
the
comment,
cynical.
not a cynical one, but just a comment. Why do you think the state legislature took away from you, Superintendent Zimmerman, the ability to go ahead and move a teacher from one school to another who is not performing adequately as far as instruction is concerned?
You know, I'm going to sort of put on my lobbyist hat up at the legislature. I used to see just a lot of things going on, some things that just didn't make any sense. I read a lot of House bills to the admin team about, you know, just where their priorities are. I think that people come in, and there's been a lot of things happening with the legislature that's taken away local control to begin with, and maybe they don't respect and appreciate what schools are doing, that people think they know the answers, but what they don't know is maybe the landscape's a little bit different in whatever school district that is. But I just think that that's sort of been the way of, if you look at a lot of the bills over the last few years, it just seems that there's been just less local, they just want less local control, and they want to control things. That's the way it is, and that's I'm not being cynical, that is the way, what I see. And I used to see it up there, and I said, you don't, there are people who didn't have a clue, and they were just going with their lobbyists and making eventually laws that didn't make a lot of sense. And so, I don't know, maybe it's lack of maybe respect for what schools are doing. And, you know, we were talking today just at the county superintendent's meeting about all the good things that I've been bragging about Nogales, the things that we've been able to do during these tough times. And we're not certainly where we want to be, but I'm very proud of the fact that we're able to be as effective and efficient and have the quality teachers that we have, because there are other alternatives. But it really bothers me, whether it's the lawyers or whether it's the things going on at the legislature, I try to stay away from them. We take the cards that are dealt to us, and we play them the best we can.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
No further comments. Let's move on to item 6, the consent agenda. Approval of routine warrants, purchase orders, travel claims, employee leave and transfer requests, and employee resignations. Any matter on the consent agenda will be removed from the consent agenda and discussed as regular agenda items upon the request of any board member. Item A, approval of April 16, 2012 regular board meeting minutes and April 30th, 2012 study session. B, ratification of student activities auxiliary operations vouchers. C, ratification of expense payroll vouchers. Item D, approval acceptance of donation from Patricia Hemman of $5,000 to Wade Carpenter Middle School to be used to purchase nonfiction books for the library. Item E, approval of supplementary materials, reading and math intervention manuals. Item F, approval of supplementary materials, reading and math to include review, practice, and mastery. Item G, approval of professional development and early release days for 2012-2013 school year. Item I, approval of fiscal years 2012-2013 schedule of pay periods and paydays. Item J, 2013 Annual General Statement of Assurance. Item K, approval of Marzano Protocol utilizing eye observation from Learning Sciences International. Item L, permission to continue raising funds and permission to travel to FBLA National Leadership Conference in San Antonio, Texas. M, renewal of award for sole sourced CRS Incorporated Subfinder. Item N, renewal of contract school webmasters. Item O, renewal of sole source for Kronos Incorporated. Item P, renewal of award for sole source to creative product sourcing. Item Q, renewal of contract and sole source status to Young Audiences as contract. Item R, award for sole source status to Tyler Technologies Incorporated, provider of Infinite Visions. Item S, award of sole source 2012-2013 affiliated memberships and educational service providers. Item T, renewal for Secure Tech security monitoring 2012-2013. U, award for sole source status to Nogales International and Tucson newspapers. Item V, renewal of award of sole source for U.S. Postal Service, City of Nogales, Unisource Energy Services, Valle Verde Water 2012-2013. Item W, award for sole source to NCS Pearson Incorporated Power School. Item X, personnel agenda summary. Item Y, approval of contracts, wage notices for 2012, 2013 school year. Item Z, addenda for extended school year, ESY summer school 2011, 2012, and that's the whole alphabet.
Minus H.
Minus H, right.
Mr.
Entertain a
Chairman?
motion?
Mr. Chairman? Thank you. Mr. Chairman, could we please discuss G, K, N, and X?
Okay, do we want to approve this, or?
Did you say X or
I'd like to ask for item Y, so I can make a separate comment, please.
Dr. Verona, did you say X? Did you say Y? What did-
X, and Hector said
Well, why don't we?
Dr. Verona, did you just say X or did you say S? What?
X.
X. So G,
G,
I still think I need a
I
motion.
think we need to make a
K,
motion
and K.
to approve the consent agenda.
without the ones?
No, actually, we're asking right now if any board member would like to separately discuss any consent agenda item.
Okay.
And I
Okay,
think
then we
he's
separate them
requesting
out.
it, and then we separate them.
Okay, and what were the ones that,
Thank you.
Marcy?
G, K, N, X, and Hector said Y.
MX?
N is
G,
in Nancy.
K, N,
Nancy.
X, and Y.
Y.
Right.
Okay,
I move to approve the consent agenda item minus those items.
is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
I have one
Discussion.
discussion item,
Discussion.
please. Sorry, I just want some reassurance from Ms. Soto that on our sole source procedures, you know, that's really another way of saying we're not going to put it out for bid, we're not going to get competitive bids, because Microsoft is the sole maker of Microsoft software. But of course, there's software that does what Microsoft software can do. Are we still in compliance with that sole source concept if we say, look, this software provider has, I don't know why I'm picking on software, but the software provider has proprietary software that other people manufacture to do the same thing, but we're not going to look at those things or have them bid because this particular package is only made by these people. And of course, it's proprietary. But I just always become concerned with that. Could you help me with that a little bit, please?
Sure. I believe there's different types of sole sources. For example, we sole source Valle Verde water because Desert Shadows and Bracker. That's the only
Only without-
place they can get water. So utilities, by their own nature, become a sole source item. There's sole source where we have to make every effort to make sure that there's no other provider that provides a specific product or service, and we do require the documentation. The third type of sole source would be like in software programs, and I'll use the accounting system that we use, for example, that for the district to purchase a new accounting software, the cost would, be, a lot more than renewing the contract that we have, for example, with Tyler Technologies, which provides the Infinite Vision software. Yes, they also are the sole source provider for that software, but we also have to look at the ongoing costs and also the cost to train staff if we were to go with a new program, for example. Now, if we felt uncomfortable that the program was not, doing its job or providing the service that it needs to provide meaningful reports, then we would have to evaluate that and put out a bid. But again, these are some of the decisions that we have to make. Do we move forward, with Chronos, the SubFinder, PowerSchool? It's our student data management system. So because they're already in place, that provider becomes a sole source provider.
That's my question. Is
Yeah.
it statutorily permissible that we
Yes.
say, well, there's other people that can give us this, but it's cheaper for us to stay where we are? That's statutorily permissible?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and another example would be like the locks that we use for our doors. If you buy a certain product, and I'm not going to name products because, I don't want to give preferential treatment to one vendor or another. But, you know, it would cost a lot more to change out all the locks and all the doors for the district rather than just staying with that one vendor, because that is a system that we have in place. It saves us money to buy those locks in bulk. So those are some of the things that we need to evaluate when we make the recommendations for sole source.
If you're telling me that sole source definition is permitted, then
Yes.
that's fine.
And it's the same as adopting curriculum, that, you know, if you adopt, you know, a Follett, for example, that in its own way becomes a sole source because you can only buy those books from that provider. So it's kind of the same analogy there.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
No, sir.
Okay, all in favor of approving the consent?
We haven't talked about the other items.
No, he's just on the.
Oh, I'm sorry, just this one? Okay,
All
I'm
in
sorry.
favor of approving the consent agenda minus items G, K, N, X, and Y?
Aye.
Say aye.
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 That approves, okay. First item, item G, approval of professional development and early release days for 2012-2013 school year.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the professional development and early release days for the 2012-2013 school year.
Second.
Any discussion?
I would like to have a presentation, because I think it's important, what a fine job was done by the Superintendent Zimmerman this school year of cutting down those professional developments. I think that the parents want to know what is going to happen for next year.
Yeah, absolutely. What we're presenting this year is actually very similar, almost identical to what we presented to you last year. We certainly did bear in mind the comments that you had made with regards to the number of early release days while we were trying to meet our professional development needs. So you'll see that the times are very much like last year as far as the early releases go. So we're doing what we need to do with regards to professional development, exams, things of that nature, but also attending to the amount of time, instruction in the classroom.
We actually thought about putting this also in the paper, get some feedback. The key last year is that if you recall, we presented to the board I'll use the word enormous. There was an enormous amount of early release days, to the point that I would get a lot of phone calls as to, you know, it seemed like the kids were always out, and we took a look at all the schools, and we provided that to you, and we cut it down significantly. This year, there was some inclusion with the admin team, and it is, you said, virtually the same. It is identical. I didn't see, but
I can point out the difference to you. We did provide a little extra time to the vocational high school because as we look to expand our AOI program and they have a number of teachers retiring in a large school, you could have 3 or 4 retire. In a small school, that's half your staff. So we're building in some additional time where we need to front load some of the technology programs and things that we anticipate taking place there between the regular Pearson and the AOI school.
but all the other schools were the same.
Yeah. Mhm.
How many total early release?
You know, I almost counted it and I didn't. I apologize. I apologize, I did not.
More or less.
Um,
I'm
Okay,
thinking
let's
that
say
it's
that. I'm going with
12
11.
in my head, but I think at
I
one side it was
apologize.
13.
It's not too many.
So-
What we've also, if you remember, we used to have a couple of pages. What we've combined in here is exam time, parent-teacher conferences, things of that nature, in here as well. So you can see the entire calendar and the impact of both the professional development, early releases, and the normal business that we need to do.
No, nothing for school meeting, school board meeting, early releases? Nothing?
I'm sorry, no.
That doesn't work for us.
No work for
I'm sorry, no.
Oh, well, okay.
Just that Superintendent Zimmerman, I thought that this meets the needs of the community. It has strong professional development. It's focused in on objectives. They're all here, and I just wish, on just my opinion, and it might be there, but just some more time on talking about teacher evaluations, principal evaluations, so that you can get feedback from the teachers and the administrators. I didn't quite see that there, but I think last year your recommendation was solid. This year your recommendation is solid, and it should have been put on as an action item so the community knows about this, because they think we're going to go back to all of those, and we're not, and I think it's a good recommendation.
Just keep in mind, there's lots of these things I could have probably put under action and pulled them out. There were several other items to talk about, but in the future, I will keep that in the forefront of my mind and put that as an action.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Does the board want to approve each one of these individually or as a group?
I would think individually.
Individually, okay. Entertain a motion?
I made the motion already for that.
Oh, we have,
We did, okay.
We're under discussion.
No more discussion?
No more
All in favor of approving item G of the consent agenda? Say aye.
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 Approved unanimously. Item K, approval of Marzano protocol utilizing eye observation from Learning Sciences International.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve Marzano protocol utilizing eye observation from Learning Sciences International.
My second.
Discuss?
The only thing here, Mr. Chairman, Superintendent Zimmerman, is I'm concerned with the price, okay? And it goes through this, all they do is they change verbiages, it means the same thing. It wouldn't be too bad, the $77,000, but the $20,000 annually perpetually is kind of bothersome to me. I'm not going to go against the committee because it's got to be research-based, and if this is the best thing that they feel that they've spent the time with it, I'm going to be supportive of it, but I do have those concerns, coupled, Superintendent Zimmerman, with my concern that not enough weight was given to data is what I think should be, because I don't see how you can say you have a good teacher and we're putting all of this emphasis on accountability and data, but it doesn't really relate in that shrinking down to the 33% and adding more to the observation. But here again, I yield to the committee. It's just how I feel that more emphasis should be put on the data, because that's what the state is looking, that's what the schools are being judged by, and I think more emphasis should have been put on that. Besides that, I'm supportive. I just wish the committee would have gone out to more sites to visit the different protocols than to just say just one and call it quits like that. I just think more time should have been spent on that, but Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Any other discussion? Marcy, I think what they call that $20,000 is an extortion fee. And you see that.
But
you
you're
see
right.
that with-
Okay, I was going to be quiet about this, but you want to know what there was actually when we went out and discussed this, it was actually significantly more, and then we decided, keeping in mind that whether you're taking this out of title money, and though we try to stay away from M&O, many people don't look at it that way. All they see is, well, this is $70-some thousand, and there may be people out there who say, we could have used that money for raises. And that's the way that people think. And so I struggled also. A matter of fact, we asked them to go back and take a look at the money and things that maybe we can do in-house and try to cut back on that. But after also hearing really the pros and cons and thinking about the issues of subjectivity and the lack of specificity and those types of things, we thought this was the way to go. But we were certainly, we had a lot of discussion about this with the committee about the money. I asked purposely during the discussion whether or not what was the alternative, because we talked about that alternative. What would we do? Because obviously we knew that the governing board would have maybe a concern about the cost. So we were mindful, but yet here we are still making the recommendation. All things being considered, we believe it's the way to go.
may I ask, Mr. Chair, is it at all negotiable? I mean, can you say to them that, give us a 2 or 3 year period of implementation where we can see that it's something that works, that we're gonna keep, and then maybe we're okay with a maintenance fee after that, but is there some negotiation open?
We've been negotiating, if you are not attracted to this figure, the first one really would have been not popular. We've been negotiating down and continue to let them know that we're not still on board with this price. How can we tweak this? What can we do? So we've tried very hard, and I think this is considerably less than where we began our conversations.
We'll continue to try to
Can you ask
whittle
him
it
to,
down.
for,
Sure.
during the implementation of a year or two, that he waive it?
We'll
And then if
do
we
what-
keep it, okay.
We'll do whatever we can
We
to
can
make
ask.
it cheap as possible and bring that price down. You know, I can tell you, I was listening to the whole conversation, whether it's Danielson, Marzano, and I really don't care about so much what they have to say about, don't try this at home, because they're trying to sell you something.
Right.
So, with that being said, I start to think, you know, that's exactly what I would expect from the people who are selling you something is, look, don't try this at home. Try it with us, because, you know, we're trying to get your business. But we still believe that it's a better way than the alternative. But we'll do our best to continue to try to negotiate down.
Can I ask just one question, Angel? How long has Marzano been around?
Oh, yeah, I think longer than my career. So for years, he started off in instruction, and this is kind of the place where all of his work with instruction and teacher leadership and administration has brought him to this point, so more than 20 years.
No, I'm talking about this software package that he has available. in the
His software
marketplace.
package, gosh, since he hooked up with iObservation, a few years, but I'll be honest, I'm not sure how many years back it goes, so.
We just want to know that it's not his first year.
Oh, no,
Oh,
no,
no,
no.
he'll go hand in
no.
hand with
It's-
Lazat
it's
and Madeline,
not.
the late Madeline.
No.
He'd go toe to toe with all of them. He's very research oriented, and
On his webpage here, he says he's the author of more than 30 books and 150 articles on topics such as instruction, assessment, writing, and
Oh,
implementing
Very
standards.
nice.
All written this year.
No, no. No. No, this is not his first time
We
on
get
this.
it.
Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed?
Nay.
One dissenting vote from Frank. Okay. Item N, renewal of contract school webmasters.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the renewal of the contract for school webmasters.
Is there a second?
Second?
Discussion.
Mr. Chairman, the only concern that I have with this webmasters and Superintendent Zimmerman is that I think that we have a lot of quality people in this area that can do it. But the thing that bothers me the most is every time I look at our NUSD website, the students are not NUSD students, the buildings are not NUSD students, the sites are not NUSD sites. So how can we have a site and put all these faces on there that aren't even our own students? I think that nobody has known it. It's cynical for us to be doing something like that. Why aren't we putting our kids, our teachers, our facilities on that website?
I can tell you that all that is being changed as a conversation we had earlier. We had met with the tech folks. I don't want to go into the history of how it all came about because it wasn't, I was not in charge at that time. It was one of those discussions that went around and around. We had an individual who had retired from the tech department that was initially going to maintain that website. By the name of Pete, won't mention the last name, and he retired, but he was the gentleman that was going to do it. We didn't feel at that time, after at least the past superintendent who was sort of checking this out, met with the tech department, didn't feel like there was at least anybody in that department that could do this. At least that was my understanding. So then there was a process, I believe, where at that time the past superintendent met with the business manager and moved forward on and just going out for bids. And we went with a outfit, I believe they're based out of Mesa. But since you bring it up, we are trying to do our best now to see if we can't do this in-house. We certainly know that when you take a look at the website, you are 100% accurate. It is not reflective of the population. To show that all the pictures are Caucasian when we are in a 98% Hispanic community doesn't make sense to me either. So we are addressing that. I hope to get a report from Alex at my tech meeting with him. But you are right.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Any other discussion?
I'll give a report later on that.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? None? Item passes. Item X, personnel agenda summary. Chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the personnel agenda summary.
Second?
Second.
Discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Superintendent Zimmerman, I'm looking over your recommendations for the administrators. And once again, I want to surface my concern, especially as we have been talking about House Bill 2823 and the accountability, especially for the principals, especially for the elementary principals, how we are asking them to analyze data, to spend time analyzing the data, correlating with the new core curriculum goals and everything. And my concern that I surfaced before Superintendent Zimmerman, and you said you were going to address it, but I would just like to say that based on what we've been talking about, the dialogue that we've been having at this meeting, I strongly feel, Superintendent Zimmerman, that the elementary principal should be on a 12-month contract. They are the ones who are the backbone for our middle school program and our high school program. And when I look at this, there's people on 12 months that have no accountability for student achievement, have no accountability on the day-to-day functioning of students and parents and results. And if one of these elementary principals is going to come out with a C or a D, you know that it's not going to be a pretty sight. And they are under tremendous pressures, much more than I have ever been under as an administrator. And I think that they are deserving of your recommendation to a 12-month contract, Superintendent Zimmerman. And also, I noticed on one of these, there's a recommendation for a teacher, a very good teacher. She taught at Nogales High School, Cecile Concanon. Is she coming to us? Is she leaving Rio Rico High School now and coming over here to us? Mr. Chairman, those are the only questions that I would like for the superintendent to please address.
I want to be clear because I've worked up the math on the individuals. If you look from item 10 all the way to number 1, those are individuals that are either on 11 or an 11.5.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are specifically, I hear you saying the word principals, and if that's the case, you're talking about 6 more individuals. Am I clear to assume that you are addressing those 6? Or are you addressing all of the administrators?
Mr. Chairman, Superintendent Zimmerman, I'm addressing the principals of the elementary schools right now.
Okay. We worked up that, and remember, we did a budget presentation. We put a lot of things up there. And I believe at the study session you had asked for us to sort of work up those numbers. Well, we worked up the numbers for all 10 of them. For all 10 of them, it would be in the neighborhood very close to about 50,000. For the 6, we're talking about 22,000. It includes benefits on both scenarios. So it isn't anything that money can't fix. I can tell you in terms of my philosophy, my opinion, I've worked in districts as a principal where I was on an 11-month, perhaps maybe on a 10. I have a difficult time at times thinking that we need elementary principals at schools when no one's there. I certainly agree with that during the school or the summer when you have principals that are working the 3 summer schools. And then remember how this came about was as a result of budgetary cuts from a few years ago. It would be nice to have everybody on 12 months. It's just certainly, it's nothing that money can't fix. Could we find things for them to do? Probably. Are there things that they want to do? Certainly. But we went and we came up with a lot of budgetary recommendations that year because that what was going on that year is that we were thinking of administrators. People were thinking that we had to give a little something, so we put money into the hat. We also worked from the classified, and the certificate. Everybody was trying to help offset what the budget was going to be. I'll tell you right now, and I'll tell the administrators, I don't believe everybody should be on a 12-month contract. That's just not my philosophy.
Mr. Chairman, Superintendent, could you just clarify, so I'm clear? I take my guidance from you as the CEO of the district. So then my surfacing that the 6 elementary principals should go to a 12-month contract, are you?
I believe that the administrators that should be on 12, right, from at least administration, from the site administration, are individuals that are working 12 months with the kids. 11 and a half, I'll tell you another thing, is that many people go on vacation. They'll take 2 weeks off. What is the difference if I had them on 12 months and they're going to take 2 weeks off? They're still 11 and a half, are they not?
Well, I could say that for people who recommend here, Mr. Chairman, Superintendent Zimmerman, that don't have administrative degrees, but that's not my point. My point is that elementary principals are being held to a high standard for academic achievement. I think that they are deserving of being, like we say, what we said on the House bill, of being rewarded to have a 12-month contract. I don't care if they're out on vacation, but they should understand that we demand that you be here to analyze the data, to set the goals for the teachers, and you are going to be held accountable along with Superintendent Zimmerman. And I think that they are deserving of having those 2 additional weeks to have full-time 12 months employment. Their task, especially now, is incredibly difficult. They tread on thin waters daily. And I think they are, I don't want to make another comment to pit myself against you and you against, I don't want to get into that.
I struggle both ways. I just remember from the very beginning when we went with when we went about $400,000 in savings that year, there were almost a couple hundred individuals that were put from 12-month back to 11. And it's not just administration, it was classified included. And we did that because of the budgetary constraints at that time. Would I be upset if this governing board amended the item and was to include them on a 12-month? I would not be upset about it. So I don't think this is adversarial at all. What I think it is that it's an issue of money. We try to do our very best to take a look at the budgetary presentation, and there's a lot of different needs. There's people who have other interests that are out there, not just those interests. There are other interests, and there's a lot of ways to skin this cat. I'm just saying that from all the things that that at least I think about when we're going through our budgetary development over the last few months, is that just wasn't one of the ones that I thought would make my first list. But I wouldn't be upset if this board wishes to amend this item to make it 12 and vote on it, that would be fine with me as well.
Well, I have a question. Does a person who's on a 12-month contract and they have so many weeks of vacation, do they get those weeks of vacation in addition to the 12 months of pay, or?
No.
So
No, you get.
Are you basically talking about a semantics issue here? Would one of the elementary school principals at 11 and a half months, the amount of money that they're making if they went to 12 months, would it be the same? Or would it be more?
It would be more, yes, because the Superintendent Zimmerman indicated it would cost us $20,000 more.
It would be half a month more?
Half a month, yes, sir. It would be half a month more.
22,000 more.
But if I may just, Mr. Chairman, Superintendent Zimmerman, yes, I can make an amendment, offer an amendment to the main motion. I'm not looking for this board to get into anything with you. You are the person. We don't want to show division, but I am just making this suggestion because I feel that those elementary principals are deserving, especially for the high standards of academic accountability. I'm going to stick with your recommendation, Superintendent Zimmerman, but I want to express to you my thoughts on how I feel, especially when I see everybody else on that list, okay? That you recommend for 12 months and not the backbone of academic achievement. Mr. Chairman, can we go on to Mrs. Concanon now? Then you can make your recommendation. Or, Mr. Chairman, Mrs. Zuniga, can you tell me about Mrs. Concanon, please? Cecile.
Yes, sir. Celia Concanon, she was made an offer, a conditional offer, until the board was able to act on this item at Pearson Vocational High School.
Well, I
For
just
next
want you
school
to know,
year.
she taught at Nogales High School. She's a tremendous person, and she comes from two of the finest teachers, James Viejo Concanon and Mrs. Concanon, who were both my teachers, just fine teachers in this building that taught many of the people who are out here right now, and I think that's a good recommendation. I just wanted to, was wondering why she was here, but we're glad she's here.
You can congratulate Mr. Kramer for that.
I'll be carefully guarded to be responding to that. I won't say I recruited her. She did come to visit me, Dr. Verona, in December. She did a tour of the Pearson for 4 hours. She saw the students, the setup. She liked it. She wanted to come over. I said, that's fine. Like I said, I was just showing her around, and she liked the school. Plus the fact that she wanted something different because she wanted to come back to Nogales. Exactly to what you said as well.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer. That's a good. Mr. Chair.
Any discussion? More discussion?
Just to clarify, following up on Mr. Hunter's question, I asked Mr. Steve, if you go on our salary schedule and this person fits into an $80,000 salary for that elementary principal position, is it correct in saying that, and that, let's say that number on that salary scale is $80,000, that we will, but because of this policy, we will pay that person 11/12 of that $80,000?
Yes, you're talking of the 11-month contract?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay. So whatever the salary base amount is,
It would be minus 112.
minus 1/12.
I'd
Thank
like to add that when the board, when we did this cutback, for lack of a better word, we were up against a wall. When Tucson was firing hundreds and hundreds of teachers, this board decided not to disrespect the elementary school teachers, but to realize that if your doors were closed, the board viewed it as you weren't working. And in order to keep from firing teachers like so many other communities were, everyone kind of gave a little to be able to keep everyone on. And it was meant as no disrespect or being unappreciative of the elementary school principals or any other principals that whoever else was going, who gave up a half month. It wasn't done for that. It was done to try and keep this whole group together as a whole. So that's where we were at that time, Dr. Ronan. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If I might, Mr. Chair, I might take it back one step further, really, because way back when, I think that these 12-month contracts evolved out of year-round school.
That's when when Kel Cooper was here.
Right, and that's where we may have, in the normal course of things, be talking 9 or 10 months.
Right.
But we started talking about 12 because of year-round school, and we found it very difficult as a board, even though year-round school stopped, to pull back people's pay and say, guess what? We're going to pay you less now. So, I mean, we've had tugs on both sides of the rope, and it's kind of come to this thing that we've got here, but it was very much pulled the other way at one time where we were talking 9, 10 months, not 11 and a half versus 12.
All right. Any more discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to say something. We're trying to save money, right? And we got people around here that I don't know what their job is. I'm not gonna mention names, but I don't know what their job is. And, I mean, and they're getting hefty salary. So maybe we could cut something out of there, I don't know. But I feel like Mr. Barona, I think elementary principals are very important. And if we want to have the A schools, that's where we got to start, from the bottom. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Any more discussion?
No, if the superintendent's just gonna stay with that recommendation, you know, we don't wanna get into a pit with this other board and the superintendent. I don't wanna do that. I just wanna bring out and surface my idea. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All in favor of passing the motion, say aye.
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 All opposed? Passes unanimously. Item Y, approval of contracts, wage notices for 2012-2013 school years.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Mr. Chair, just real quickly, we've had a preliminary budget hearing or meeting. I know we put up some ideas and numbers. We talked about some proposed carryover balances. I don't know that we've come to a decision to where those carryovers are ultimately going to be, or where as a board we would like them to be, where any of the specific line items that were addressed, did we finally agree on where they are? Well, if they did, I misunderstood that. But my only question to you, Steve and Carla, is do you feel that we're sufficiently along in the process that we can make these commitments on these contracts because our funding sources are reasonably secure? And the range of carryover is ultimately going to be reasonable, and the expenses that we have to incur are adequately defined. If you tell me they are, then I'm comfortable proceeding. If you tell me they are not, I'm back in the same problem in that I don't want to make a commitment to spend something I don't have.
Actually, thank you for that question. I will tell you that I feel very, very comfortable with the budget. And if it goes sour, unless something that we don't know about, but from what we do know, if it goes sour, then I'm not doing my job. But I can tell you that I feel very confident that we will be able to maintain the budget with that carry forward. Not maybe at $1 million, but we will do our very best to make sure, because we've been doing this now every year. And we, we mentioned at the board meeting, or the last study session, that there were a couple staff that we'd like to hire at the middle school and maybe transfer to. We look at the numbers all the time. If we looked at the numbers and school was going to start tomorrow for the next year, based upon the numbers, we might even have been able to cut back even a little further. Just depends on what the numbers at registration does not mean butts in the seats, and that's what we get our ADM from. But I can tell you that I would not make a recommendation on this budget if I didn't feel confident about it, and that includes the next action items that you're going to have this evening. I feel comfortable with the 2% and everything else that is related to money, and I certainly wouldn't make that recommendation because I want to make anybody happy. I'm going to do what I think is for the solvency of the district and the effectiveness and efficiency of the programs. And we spend a lot of time looking at this budget, and we do feel comfortable. I'm certainly can tell you, though you asked both Carla and I think she would say the same thing because we spend a lot of time looking at it. True? You better say yes. But
She
we
smiled.
do. But we do feel very comfortable with the recommendations we're making.
That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Superintendent Zimmerman, is this on these contracts, is this the contract for the retired people? Did you add that paragraph that the attorney recommended to put in?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
No other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Approved. All right. That's it for the consent agenda. Executive session, I see no reason for us to go into executive session.
It's up to you, Mr. Chairman.
Nope. I see nothing. Move on to action, item 9, action item. Before we start, I would recommend that we interchange items C and D, just in case.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. Interchange, what do you mean?
Well,
Flip them.
In other words, do
flip
D
them.
first.
Flip them?
Yeah.
Just fine. It's
Is that
at
all
your
right?
discretion.
Okay. All right. Item A, approval fiscal year 2012-2013 provision to agreement with ADE Child Nutrition Programs.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second, any discussion?
Oh, no, just one quick question on that.
This was that 2-week
That
free
2-week.
program?
Mr. Chairman, Superintendent Zimmerman, you said on your recommendation that you had done a cost-benefit analysis. Could you share your cost-benefit analysis so I can see the percentage in case things do go down? What is the percentage so that at least we're aware of before we get into financial difficulties?
Yes. I'm happy you're talking about this, because we really paid a lot of attention to the 2-week, and we actually explored in the event that if we decided to go provision 2, and let's say during the fall that it was just not beneficial, could we go back? Or could we change to provision 3? So we explored all that, but what was really nice is tracking those numbers. And, we had some concerns when we brought this up about, mainly at the high school, because high school is just a different, some of these kids don't eat. They don't want to eat maybe at the food services. But Carla will tell you that we are very pleased, at least with the 2-week trial, that it's a good thing. And the benefit is that all the kids get to eat free next year. And if things go sideways, we'll address it at that time. But Carla can give you some good news, and at least for the 2-week good news.
Mrs. Soto, that's a workman's compensation issue right there.
And I caused it, it's my
Oh.
laptop cord. I've been worried about everybody coming up here, and then it happened to me. Well, we did the projections 2 ways. We did a projection on a monthly basis, and we also did a projection by school. And I will tell you that I was very conservative in my analysis. What we did find out during the week of the 2-week free trial is a participation increase in breakfast by 69%. And for lunch, it increased by 14%. Now, we do realize that that's not going to be the same type of participation that we would look at for the entire year if we are going with provision 2. So basically what we did, we looked at the week before provision 2 and the week after provision 2, and we created an average with those numbers. And we anticipated an average daily participation for breakfast and an average daily participation for lunch. The analysis by school is more conservative than the monthly analysis. And the way we did the schools, it would show that at the end of the year, we would gain $18,000. However, when we did the monthly analysis based on the number of school days, the current participation, and increase the participation, again, using very conservative numbers, we would look at a gain at the end of the year by $81,000. Now, we only looked between August and April because those are the 10 months that we can compare to the current year. And again, we would closely monitor this next year. So in the month of August, September, October, let's say we come to find out it's not working out, we can opt out of provision 2 at any time. So that's my commitment to you, that I would closely monitor the provision 2 status of our district and we could report on that. But I think the ultimate goal is to ensure that all kids eat and to remove that stigma that, it's a free meal program, that all kids, eat healthy meals. And I know that there's controversy about that, but we do follow guidelines set by Child Nutrition Program. And we want to make sure that all kids eat, especially breakfast. I was very pleased to see that the breakfast participation increased, even though we already offer free breakfast. So we're halfway there. We're already subsidizing breakfast. So lunch is really the area that we have to worry about. But again, I do feel confident in moving forward with Provision 2. And again, the highest participation was in the students that qualified for reduced meals. I think those are the families that are kind of borderline between, reduced and free, and they really took advantage of the trial. And I just get goosebumps because I can think of a lot of the kids that go, during the weekend without eating. And I think that these are some of the kids that we will be helping out if we implement the program. I really do feel that we're doing a good thing.
Carla, I noticed on your analysis here, do you have any thoughts on why the month of September and the months of, did you have months with negative gain? In other words, September you have like a $22,000 loss in the program, but why would September and December and say March be so different?
In the month of September, if you notice that this year we had 21 days, school days, and the projection only shows 19 days. So that would be part of the negative. And the number of days are kind of hidden in the, well, you can see it. If you look at the, like 2011-12, you see August, free, reduced, paid, and then you have 17 days. If you scroll across to the 12-13 years, you'll see that's 18 days. And again, so.
Mr. Chairman, Mrs. Soto, well, on this recommendation that you're making, how is that going to, with your critical eye, how is that going to do with the report that we reviewed with the Auditor General that our cost for meals is way out of proportion? Will this be able to lower that?
Well, we've been looking at the entire food service program in general. After seeing the auditor report, Auditor General's report, not only for this last year, but the year before, the costs were creeping up. And we have made a lot of investments in the food service program. We've really revamped a lot of the equipment to make sure that it's adequate. And we've also looked at staffing to make sure that all the needs are being met at the sites. Now it's time to go back and look and trim down on those costs. I know that food costs are going up, so we have to look at ways of controlling other costs that are, within our control, like labor costs, and without sacrificing the benefits for the employees for the food service program. So we have to create just that careful balance to make sure that we are meeting the needs not only of the children, but the employees and the district itself. So we are looking at that closely, like we are in the M&O budget, making sure that those administrative costs do go down. So, but I get it.
Mr. Chairman, Mrs. Soto, you have a captive audience. You have 5,000 captive people. So I hope the lunch, you also make an attractive lunch so that that captive audience will be over there for the lunches. It seems like the breakfasts are doing fine, but it's the lunch where the downfall of this program can collapse. So I hope that the lunches there's some new approach being taken to the lunches.
Yes. And we have like 5 other spreadsheets that we put together for this. And I will tell you that the participation at Nogales High School when the grill was put out exceeded 1,000 students, and that was just incredible to see. Good. That much participation, and again, they were able to feed that many kids in 15 to 20 minutes worth of time. So that was a lot to be said for the program, but Mr. Bañuelos is here to talk a little bit about the menus and some of his ideas for next year.
Must they talk about food?
Good evening, members of the board, superintendent, Dr. Nash. Yeah, there is a new meal pattern coming out for next year, which is actually going to help us serve better food. More grills at the park. You know, when we have the grills, you saw the participation go up. It's not even at the park, we do it in the parking lots. I mean, you see kids that you have never seen before eat in the cafeterias or outside at the grill is unbelievable. But we are implementing new menus to better our program. And we are thinking about the pieces that we control, like labor, benefits, you know, food costs. We're looking at that to help us make sure that, you know, I'll make this work. We will make this work.
Mr. Chairman? Thank you.
Yeah,
More discussion?
Just make it work, that's all.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Approved unanimously. B, approval of fiscal year 2011-2012 school district annual expenditure budget revision number 1.
Move to approve.
A second?
Discussion. No discussion?
No, we discussed this.
Good. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Approved unanimously. Item C, approval of insurance changes for SY 2000, school year 2012-2013 from Plan A15 to Plan B15.
Move to approve.
Second?
Any discussion?
The only thing on this one, Mr. Chairman, that on the call to the public, we had a request from Mr. Chavez asking us to table this because I guess him and the people that he represents don't quite understand the plan or its financial impact to them, and I don't understand why that is, but I would like to honor Mr. Chavez's request. If they need a little bit more time to go ahead and talk about it, maybe at the IBN meeting, they'll be ready for. The only problem that I see that I want to make sure, Superintendent Zimmerman, is that the time frame. If we were to wait, let's say for our meeting in June, is that going to have any kind of an impact on the decision-making process right now? Or Mr. Chairman, Mrs. Zuniga?
Let me say this. I'd ask Dr. Nash to flip-flop items C and D because if this is going to be tabled, then you're going to have to also table the next item. I would request that. You have to understand that the amount of money for the insurance plan would cost the district, if you recall the flow sheet that we had up, there would be $200,000. That is how we're able to sort of think about giving 2%. The reason why this is even on the board is that one of the things you heard is that 97% they use the B plan to begin with. So we believe that being altruistic for the overall good of the district, we just felt that that would be a better use of the money, would be better to go to raises. Now keep in mind, and I mentioned this at the last meeting, that the IBN group is slated to meet on Wednesday. There's also some homework that will still be given out, and I had said that there might be a possibility of discussing those items and even doing addendums to contracts, but we're not totally done. We're just trying to move forward on some things right now to help us deal with our budget, but there are some other things that, I think there were about 5 items that we had brought up. They'll be discussed on Wednesday, but I can tell you the big item is that if every 1% costs $200,000, I could not, Mr. Arana, the answer to your question, I'd have to change my answer because I don't feel comfortable doing that. Not right now, I don't. So that's why I'd ask the switch. You're talking, that's a significant amount of money.
Mr. Chairman, Mrs. Zuniga, can you help me with Mr. Chavez's
Sure.
concerns?
Sure. I've been to a lot of the sites, about 6, and I was at support services. I think one of the primary issues is that employees maybe don't understand the deductible plans, and that is very difficult to understand if you're used to a copay only plan. Today we had a meeting at the district office, and I put an example up on the board of 5 hospital visits, emergency room visits, and it's just for illustration purposes, but I wanted to show employees that, you know, it might seem scary to have a deductible associated with your health plan, but with the example that I put up on the board, For 5 hospital visits under the A plan, you would pay $500, $100 for each visit under the A15 plan. Under the B15 plan, assuming that each hospital visit was being billed at $500 with a 50% discount because we're part of the Blue Cross Blue Shield network, the total cost would be out of pocket $442.50 for the same 5 hospital visits. And I know that's an unlikely example, but it was kind of educational to put it up on the board, because you pay a deductible only once per individual through the year. So it might seem like every time you're going to the hospital or you have a service that's associated with a deductible, you're going to be out $300, but that's not the case. You could potentially end up spending a lot more money out of pocket on the A plan, which we illustrated that through a catastrophic example. The person with a catastrophic illness, which was the cancer, spent $12,500 out of pocket last year, and this is a real example. If they had had the B plan, the maximum out of pocket for the year is $2,500. That does not include co-pays. You would still have to be responsible for your co-payments, but still that's a significant difference in out-of-pocket expenses of about $9,000 to $10,000. So I really just think that it's an educational an educational gap. And I will do my best to keep educating employees and going out to the sites and providing, that kind of consultation. Also, what I explained earlier was if you bought up to the A15 plan just on an individual person, not only would it cost you $500 if the board were to approve our recommendation to make the standard plan the B15 plan, it would cost you the $500 out of pocket for the co-pays plus the $528 for the monthly premiums during the year that you would pay to buy up. So really the total cost to you would be $1,028 for those 5 hospital visits, and on the B plan it would be $442. So I think, and I can do this stuff like in my head, and I've been doing insurance for a long time, and like I've said at my meetings, it took me about 5 to 7 years to become very well versed in this. So it wasn't something that I could understand like in a week. And I admitted that to some of the teachers, and they were like, woo, that's good to know, because sometimes when I'm putting things up on the board about deductibles, premiums, co-payments, out-of-pocket maximums, to them it's Chinese. It's as if I were being asked to teach a classroom and to put, forth some strategies that I know nothing about. So I understand that point. But because most of our participants are using the A15 now only for doctor's visits, the 2 plans are the same, identical. If you go to a doctor, $15 copay. If you go to a specialist, $25 copay. If you go to a chiropractor, $15 copay. If you go for a lab, $15 copay. That is what 97% of us are currently using the plan for. So to put $240,000 into that, when we're not even using it, but just for that, and the costs are identical, doesn't seem like it's a very responsible thing to recommend to the board.
Mr. Chairman, Mrs. Zuniga, the administrators receive a fringe benefit of district-paid insurance. Then, are you telling me that if all the administrators are going to be on the B15 plan and they choose to go to the A15, they have to pay the difference out of their pocket, not the district?
Yes, sir, that's correct. The B15 plan would be the standard plan for all. And Ms. Soto made an observation for me. I didn't include on the spreadsheet the cost for the administrator buy-up, and I did include classified and certified. So because certified received that $500 301 money that's intended to offset costs for health insurance, the cost for administrators to buy up would be like the classified amount to buy up per month per category.
Okay.
I hope that helps.
Okay. And the Mr. Chairman, I just want to explain my vote to the community, because I don't want people to feel that you come up to the podium and we're going to just turn our backs or anything like that. I think that Superintendent Zimmerman, Mrs. Zuniga, that Mr. Chavez's points are well taken. I hope that immediately you start on your search to get comparable insurance bids so that we can actually compare what other policies are available and what costs there are, because I think we're probably going to be greatly surprised that there are competitive, it's a competitive market out there. But I understand what Mr. Chavez is saying, and I have concern because he has a lot of empathy for the people that he represents. But I just can't see right now, Mr. Chairman, the Superintendent Zimmerman is recommending that we proceed forward. Mrs. Zuniga has explained it. And I just don't know when we can meet, because we're so tied up in the month of May right now that we probably couldn't get together till June. So I understand Mr. Chavez. He's always represented very passionately his concerns for his people. So I hope, my vote will be to continue on as the superintendent has recommended. But I hope you can spend some time with Mr. Chavez and the people he represents to show them that it isn't going to be, and if it is, please come back. If there's an adverse impact to them, please come back so see how we can solve that problem. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Any other discussion?
Just real quick, Maida, if I'm hearing right, you're almost saying B is better than A. Then why is A more expensive? I don't get it.
Because it's a copay only plan, and I really don't get it myself. Because if under the example that I mentioned, the person has a limitless out-of-pocket responsibility, that's usually not what you're buying when you buy any type of insurance. When you buy car insurance, when you buy health insurance, you're usually looking for some peace of mind as to what your maximum out-of-pocket responsibility is going to be, or liability, if you will. So I'm surprised to see that the A plan does not have an out-of-pocket maximum, but it does not. And it's copay only, so I think it's very easy for us to think about if we go for a service, we're only going to pay a flat amount, and then the insurance will cover 100%. So that's a simple concept for most people, $200, $250. You see, if it's like if you were going to take your car in for a service, we can kind of compare it to that, use that analogy and say if you're going to get brakes done, it's going to be $60. It's similar. If you're going to go to the doctor, it's this. If you're going to have an ambulance ride, it's $200. If you're going to be in patient hospital, it's $200. Whereas with the B plan, there's some variables that are not clearly defined. For example, when I say you'll have to pay 15% of the eligible amount, that's not to say that if a doctor bills $15,000 that you're going to pay 15% on $15,000. Because we have the Blue Cross Blue Shield network, the discounts are huge. I looked at a bill today that an employee shared with me. The billable amount was $3,800 as an example. And the eligible amount was $800. So $3,800 being the initial bill versus the $800, which is the eligible expense. On the $800, you would pay the 15%.
And that would go towards your deductible.
Correct, which is then only about $120 that would go towards your deductible. So I think that's why the B plan is a little bit harder to sell, harder to teach, harder to educate. So that is very difficult. And also, employees really look at it that way. They say, okay, Maida, you're changing it from $100 to $300. That's all they can think about. And that was the thing that I heard most in support services was that's just too much. But the other thing that I've been explaining is that usually when it's a copay only charge, doctors expect that payment up front, right there on the spot. If you have a deductible, they usually work with you for a payment plan. So with a deductible, they'll usually say, okay, what can you give me now? Or they'll ask you to pay 20%, and then they'll ask you for payments. And as long as you're making a payment, even if it's $5, you're not going to default on that amount, and you're going to be able to continue paying. In many cases, you're going to be paying a lot less for the B plan, but you're really not even giving it a chance sometimes because you're just so afraid of that, going. And change is hard, and I understand that, which is why I've been going to the sites, and I'm not afraid. I've told employees, tell me what your concerns are, tell me what you don't like about it. I'm not at the sites trying to convince people that one plan is better than the other. I'm trying to educate them so that they can make a good decision for themselves. And I do believe that offering 3 choices is better than just having one plan. because there are other choices that may fit better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just add on to what you said. My insurance is Blue Cross Blue Shield. I love it when the charge is $2,000 from the doctor, but you only go $500 to the insurance. I'm also a Blue Cross Blue Shield provider. I hate it when I charge and they make me cut it
Discount.
down. So it is, in that example, it is very good for the employee. Very
Thank you.
What, Maida, I'd like to recommend in your education of those individuals that have major concerns is to ask them one-on-one to bring you an idea or give you an idea of what type of services they had in the previous year and what it would have cost them had they been on this plan originally, rather than the plan that was a total just copay.
Thank you. That's a great example. We actually had a teacher at one of the meetings, and she said, I want to be pregnant, sometime in the future. Which plan would be best? So we actually took the time to do all of that legwork and calculate it plan by plan, which one would be the least out of pocket. So that's just an example, but that's a great idea. Thank you. I think Ms. Scott has an illustration as well.
I'm on the insurance committee, and I got there a little bit early with the ladies from the insurance company, and they were saying, we're looking for someone to use as an example. I gave that permission. And she got on her computer and she was doing all this thing. I don't mind telling you, I'm the one that spent $12,000 when I did taxes the last time, because I had 6 major procedures within a calendar year. Dr. Verona was very kind. He took me to the hospital on 4 of those. He was my transportation. Okay. I know that most people aren't going to have 6 major procedures in 12 months. But if you look at that list of people who brought us up by that 33%, there's not a person in this community that doesn't know that person, understand someone on that list of 8 to 10 of us that were affected by that. She did her calculations. If I had been on the B plan, it would have cost me $2,800. The $300 plus the $2,500. My actual insurance that year was $15,000, but $3,000 of that was for my kid. So I'm up here, I'm well, I'm alive. Thank you, Dr. Verona, for mentioning my purple shirt. But I'm fortunate that I could give the $12,000. I couldn't do that 3 and 4 years in a row.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Passes unanimously. All right. Item D, approval of fiscal year 2012-2013 salary increases of 2%.
I make a motion that we approve.
Second.
Any discussion?
Discussion. Mr. Chairman, Superintendent Zimmerman, at previous meetings I asked, and you said you were going to come back with some kind of guidelines, once again on those individuals whose salaries were cut 3 years ago and are still down, even with this recommendation. 2% is a good recommendation. I really compliment you and the staff of working together and coming up with 2%, because I think that's very well. We're very competitive statewide with that 2%. The only one who I know is higher is Cochise Community College that gave a 3%. But what was done with the thing that I'm confused on is these people are still there. And they're not moving. You're giving them a 2%, but they still lost money. And I know, and it's not as high. I think it's about $200 and some thousand, if Mrs. Soto explained to me. But why is it that when we were talking about the edgy jobs and we didn't have people that were supposed to be compensated, we came up with $70,000. to compensate those people. And I remember Superintendent Zimmerman saying, and I agreed with him, wholeheartedly agreed with him, we're a team. We should all be a part of this. And in the same thing, I try to take those words back to these people who are still lagging behind. I don't think it's fair that they should constantly be lagging behind. I don't care if we give them a little bit more until maybe in 3 years we get them where they have to be. But they're still lagging behind. And they were cut, and I understand the reasons why they were cut. And I'm not disputing, or I don't want to have a dialogue on why. My dialogue is only, what are we going to do to get these people back to where they were? We're going to give a 2% cut. Let's do something to get these people, how many they are, back to where they were. It's just a matter of fairness to these people. We're a team. If we're a team, we should always be a team. We should just work and say, I mean, if we can't do it, then tell me we can't do it. These are the reasons why we can't do it. But I haven't heard that. I was told that there was going to be an explanation, there was going to be alternatives for the board, and I still haven't seen that. Even though, Superintendent Zimmerman, 2% is very good, and I'm glad. Hopefully one of these days, we'll get to the steps. I don't know when that's going to come. It may not take us 5-6 years to get to the steps. But this is a good start with that. And that's my question, Mr. Chairman, Superintendent Zimmerman. When are we going to include these people as a part of our team?
Steve, before you respond to Marcy, these individuals that Marcy's talking about, he's talking about 6 individuals. I believe there are how many
No,
individuals
he's not.
on 11 and a half months?
I believe,
Or 11 months?
I believe he's asking about all of the individuals
Right.
that were
That's right.
reduced.
And all of those individuals don't cost $50,000, okay? Not all of them.
Well, that's what I said.
All of
right.
them cost how much?
200 and some $1,000.
Close to 300,000, and when, at that
Correct.
time,
200 and some $1,000.
at that time, when we made this move a couple years ago, we put up on the board close to 400. I know that we've had the attrition rate and things have happened, and we just keep reducing that way. We haven't had to riff, but that amount is anywhere between 200,000 and 300,000. I know that the only number we could give that evening is what we had up there from a couple years ago, and I know that Carla went back and researched that. But you're talking not 180 people, Carla. If I recall, it was like close to 100 now. I'm ready to try to answer your question. It's once again there's ways to do it, but it will require some give and take. And I can tell you whether it was this board having to decide where the money was going to go, I can tell you during the IBN meeting that they have their interest too. If I threw that out to them, altruistically, I would venture to guess that perhaps they'd take the 2% before bringing just the 100 people. Salary schedules, I'm gonna tell you, probably in a couple months, I'm gonna recommend to go stepless, because I just don't see what's the point after. And I've been in this now over 20 years, and I'm finding out that almost every single year in many districts, they're going stepless. If I can get 5%, I'll give you 5%. If it's a bad year, you get 1%. And that sort of, and it deals with the issue sometimes of all the other interests that people have mentioned for years in IBN. I can tell you, whether it's the 6 elementary principals or all of those people, I can tell you our salary schedules are low. And I understand taking a month from them hurt. It hurt them. I saw those folks who are now doubling up, working at Walmart and their current job. But this is the times that we're in. We tried to go for an override to maybe sort of offset those things and bring some things back. That was defeated. And as we told everybody during the loop outs, that there would be consequences to those decisions. And I understand the economical impact to the taxpayers, but they get to decide, not us. And I'm very much aware of the individuals who are struggling, and I look at those salary schedules, and I even look at even deeper than most people. I look about those individuals who've been in this district 30 years as they classified, and what they're bringing home in their retirement. I look at that too, and I say, how can they make it? And there's been decisions made for decades in Nogales, and it could have been years ago when you had a decline in enrollment. You could have, instead of having those staff stay on board, you could have done some with your salary schedule at that time. And I'm not here to throw rocks, I'm just saying that, to me, I believe it's important to when you're dealing with the reduction in students, which is where you get your money from, that you have to be mindful that with any type of reduction in the amount of kids that are leaving, that you have to be mindful that you have to reduce in your workforce. And the attrition should have started at the time that we were losing kids. We could have 4 or 5 secretaries at a school, or you could have had 2 and use that money to give monies into the pool for raises. And there are people who would believe, I'd rather have more staff and give less money. Because I've been there. I've been there with a staff and said, look, if I had 4 secretaries, and I always use this for an example, so I'm not singling this out, but 4 secretaries and they were all doing something else, when I could have had 2 people do the same job, would they be willing to get paid more money to do that? I'm mindful to the unemployment rate, because you want to keep people working too. We're one of the biggest, if not the biggest employer in Nogales. And so, you know, there's a lot of things to think about. A lot of things to think about. But I can tell you, Dr. Verona, it was not easy 3 years ago taking any of those recommendations up there, because even on our admin team we weren't agreeing. But we had to figure out some way or another to deal with a budgetary issue that nobody liked to deal with, so we weren't going to make everybody happy. But I'm certainly mindful to it. I would love to have been able to pass an override. I would have probably recommended things that had to do with the salary schedule and increases in salaries to deal with all these years where people were either frozen or they got a 1% here, nothing here. But I think I am very sympathetic to those individuals, and I know who they are. They came and saw me too, even when Mr. McCullough was here. It is tough to sit there. Probably tougher for you since you answer to your constituents, and I understand. It is very difficult to try to meet everybody's needs when you only have a certain amount of resources, and it's not easy for you, because I can make some recommendations that probably don't meet all of your interests here on the board, but we're going to do our best. And if there was a way that I could come up with the money for the elementary principals, I would. If I could come up with $300,000 or $280,000, whatever it is, Carla, I would do that too. And there are some ways to do it, and I can make some hard recommendations. Anywhere from closing down schools to increasing classroom sizes. But I'm here to tell you that there'll be somebody at that podium who will like it and won't like it. So I think that the recommendations that we make is trying to meet as many interests, not everybody's, but as many interests as we possibly can. And I think the IBN team, we sit and we listen. We listen to everybody's interests. And not everybody is going to get their needs met, but can they live with it? And that is I think the premise that comes out of the IBN team. And I know I'm on a rant right now because this frustrates me. The salary schedule has frustrated me since my first week on the job here. Because I know the salary schedule, because I was very much involved with the salary schedules throughout Arizona, and I knew exactly, by just looking at the base, where we stood. And the classified was worse than that.
So it is basically 106 people then?
Yes, Carlo, is it 100 and, I'm thinking just between 100 and 110. 110.
110? Okay.
But that has gone down quite a bit.
That what happened?
And I
Tell
will
the
find
public.
it.
Hector, I didn't hear you.
Tell the public what happened.
Oh, Carla, for Carla?
For me?
Oh, Carla. Hector, I'm sorry. Tell the public?
I'm just saying, we're talking in air about this. Just tell the folks, what are we talking about? What happened to these 110 people?
Well, initially it was about 160, 70.
Yeah,
Some
it's
of them would be like, for instance, let's say they were liaisons, they've been released through the last
The
couple of
PE
years. So PE, so those have all been reduced. Now that number's down to 110. It is not at the number it was before. So,
And what happened to them?
oh,
Give the background.
There you go. Thank you. Right. We reduced their contracts from 12 to 11 months.
because of the very reasons you mentioned earlier, which was the year-round concept that apparently went away, and what I thought you were asking is.
We didn't have year-round school anymore, so we,
And we were in a budget crisis.
and we were in a budget crisis.
Not crunch, crisis.
Right.
and we're still in a budget crisis.
We still are.
Well, if we were in a
Not a
budget
crisis,
right
I wouldn't be
now,
given
We wouldn't
2%.
be given a 2% if we were in a crisis.
But it is,
Wait till next year.
yeah.
3 years ago, it was a crisis.
No, I agree with you
It's
3
still a
years
crisis
ago.
when you're giving a 2% increase that's just a Band-Aid on a
That's
bleeding
below the
sore.
cost, before, it's still significantly below the COLA allowance, the cost of living, but, you know, I gotta tell, whether it's the IBM team or anybody, 2%, if anything, it is good faith, isn't it? It's certainly not up with the cost of living allowance, but it sure is, to me, I would be grateful, and I would give thanks to the governing board if I got 2%, and I think many people would. It's better than nothing, and this isn't the time to be greedy, but it certainly is still below the cost of living allowance.
But I think your recommendation in working with the staff to come up with a 2% is very admirable, especially when I look at other school districts that aren't giving anything right now, okay? I'm just worried that, I hope we don't forget about these 106 individuals, whether it be next year or when the time's appropriate, because, you know, they deserve to move on up to where they were. They took the brunt, so as time proceeds, let's do what we can to bring them back, though, too.
I
I'm going
won't
to
forget,
support your
and I'm
2%.
sure the 6th elementary principal is probably gonna push me down the stairs after this meeting, so, I'm just saying. But anyway, I just think, at least from where I sit, it's very difficult to meet all the needs, especially during these times, and, you know, I believe it's the best that we can do under those circumstances.
Mr. Chairman? Thank you.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? All right. Item E, approval of expanding the program of PBHS AOI to include 7th and 8th grade students.
To make a motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion?
Is there a presentation on this?
Yeah. That
Sure.
would be good.
That would be good, very good.
Don't be looking at Mr. Parra like that.
That's all right. But before I get started, I just want to make one comment. That I just wanted to commend the girls' NHS varsity tennis team, who did very well throughout the year. They ran into a steamroller of Ironwood Ridge, who went on to win the championship, so congratulations to those girls.
Thank you. Oh, they won the state championship?
No, they lost in the quarterfinals, but they lost to Ironwood Ridge, who went on to win the state. But they still had a good year.
Thank you,
Had a
Mr.
great
Kramer.
year.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Verona, and the rest of the board, I don't know who asked for the discussion, but
Me.
Ms. Suarez, certainly, thank you. We are trying to extend, we're going from bullets to cannonballs, as we used to learn from good to great back in the days, correct? And we're still at bullets, but we wanted to bring in the 7th and 8th graders to give them an opportunity for next year, and I know that I've spoken with Ms. Moleta and Ms. Montiel regarding this since February, and there may be 5 students that wanted to participate in this at their schools, but it's 5 more that have an opportunity to move ahead, be it with Algebra 1, be it with Spanish. And those credits are accepted at Nogales High School. So we're opening up some opportunities for those students. The fact is that we are the only AOI in this county.
Would you give me what is AOI?
It's our online school, Arizona Online School. And that we are the only online school in the county. We're providing more opportunities. Other than sending buses out to some other district, we can provide services to students that are in other districts that may want to enroll at 7th and 8th grade as well. So we're being somewhat competitive for that student because the dollar follows the AOI student rather than the traditional student. Because you could be a traditional student at another school, take 2 classes on AOI, we get 40%. Correct, Carla? So the state is not looking at traditional school anymore. They're looking at competency-based online schooling. And that's why we are trying to propose to give an opportunity for 7th and 8th graders. I also put in there for alternatives, and this is where Mr. Prada comes in, with long-term suspension. And I did talk to him about that. Because we need to provide some opportunities for students that, and you can step in and correct me if I'm wrong, but students get caught with drugs. We know there's drugs there, but if they get caught with drugs, where do we put them? At Pearson, we're a school 9 through 12, but if we go AOI, they can actually take advantage of being AOI, coming in after school, or with tutoring on Saturdays with our teachers. 2 of NHS students that we piloted with it, they both came to me and said, thank you. I got my half credits. I said, how did you do? One of the young ladies said, you know what? I want to do more next year. It's not so much the fact that we're trying to say, okay, we're going to put you on the line. It's opportunities and giving students opportunities to be successful.
I'm glad to hear that program is being extended to 7th and 8th graders. I know that at the junior high level, when you do have students that are advanced and looking for advanced placement, or those students that get into trouble, we don't have a venue for them to go to in long-term suspension. And I've been, I think my first year on the board, it was one of the things that I was looking for us to address, because there are those students that get into trouble, and all kids make mistakes, but they need to have a way to stay in school. They need to have a way to continue to participate in their education. And I'm glad to see that this is moving forward.
And you'll be happy to know that students that are placed by Mr. Pata at Pearson tend to do very well. They just made a wrong choice. They did something for it, and we've all been there, seen that throughout the years. And a lot of them, I'll tell you this, a lot of the students that are come in as juniors and seniors finish up there and go on to college. So we've done a very good job with that program. We continue trying to help and facilitate. And I just wanted to make mention that there are 24 other districts that have AOI throughout the state. 50. Of those 50, 24 do provide, some of them even start at kindergarten. So that's the direction it's going with some of the districts. And I'm talking about Cave Creek, Amphi, Marana, Chandler. Everybody is going in that direction. Not for everybody, but for that special student that can actually do it.
I know Mr. Kramer has been working on this. We've been communicating. Just to add, we always want to have more options for students, both in a positive and in a negative way. And I think that going in this direction will give that opportunity to the students. We do have an in-school suspension program as a district that we can offer, but not for the disciplinary issues that were discussed here, and it is very hard when we have to deal with some of these cases and we don't have additional options. So I support this. I did speak to Mr. Zimmerman on this, that I think this was the right thing to do. I know that both middle school principals are on board on this. So again, and we're piloting it. We're still working and making adjustments, and we're going to need a lot of help and support from Carla's office, making sure that we're doing the right thing in regards to the funding, and that is also coming back to our district. So that's what I wanted to say, unless you had any questions, but I think Mr. Kramer captured everything.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Any more discussion?
Mr. Chairman, just a quick comment. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Potter, I just hope that these alternatives that you have for long-term suspension, that we don't get away from the essence of the middle school concept. Because the middle school concept is dealing with the early adolescence And that's, to me, one of the prime things, besides just considering these long-term suspensions. That's why we went from a junior high philosophy to a middle school concept, is to understand the early adolescence. So I hope we don't find out that there's 20 kids or 30 kids and then we start getting away from the middle school concept. I support the program, but don't forget the middle school philosophy with dealing with the early adolescents. So too.
Sure, and I think that we've been doing that with piloting the other program for the higher level students, using our discretion and being mindful of that. To credit to the middle school principals, I think that most of the recommendations have been to make sure that we follow up with our matrix, because we don't have a matrix individually geared for elementary, middle school, or high school. It's all one discipline matrix for all students, even though we make modifications. But their recommendations and with their input, we have been able to at least put in consequences, but make sure that our students are continued to be able to return to the school, especially at the middle school level. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Item 10, Governing Board Future Request. Any future requests?
Mr. Chairman, just if you can schedule that board retreat so we do the goals in the month of June so that we don't get into the predicament we got last year, so that the superintendent knows what direction he should be taking the district in. And also, I'd like to see if you could tell me anything about the innovative educational program grants that are available. Are you going to apply for them? And also, the K-3 reading program, I attended that webinar on legislative updates, and they say that the data, expenditures, and results for the K-3 reading program is due October the 1st. I'd like to have a presentation on that to see how our district did on that K-3 reading program. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
No discussion.